Hey Board, hey Rage, hey Pseudo. 424.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm actually only 4 minutes late for 420. However, I've only been awake for about 10 minutes. So I'm probably not going to do that yet. Let's have the iced coffee first, at least.
Panel for breakfast.
Yeah! Panel breakfasts. I like that idea. Even if it is a 4:30 p.m. breakfast. Fine! That's what weekends are
You're-
for.
You're breaking your fast. It still counts.
There's your little bit of knowledge for the day if you didn't know. The term breakfast comes from to break the fast. That is what it means. It is the meal that you eat after you've been fasting, and you fast when you sleep. That's why we have breakfast every morning.
Yep.
Okay, Yakuza 4.
Should probably center
Why
that.
are you
that
looking
review
like
template.
that? There you go. No. Why are... Wow, that is not the right monitor. There you go. Why did you forget what monitor you were on? That's not right. It's not good.
Technology.
That doesn't look right either. It is for the review. Why you... Is this too zoomed in? Am I forgetting how to do this?
It has been a while.
Why is it broken? I
Maybe-
forgot the monitor and the position? But I
Maybe
haven't changed
docs.
anything.
Changed its layout. I don't know.
No, docs
Windows
still
10
looks
is
exactly the same.
particularly finicky with window layouts, though. One of the big points they made about Windows 11 is that it's going to have a better window manager.
Good!
And
'Cause it
so far,
needs it.
it is actually a better window manager. I still have some problems with it, but it's significantly better.
I was gonna say a software called Windows. You'd think it'd be better at Windows.
You'd think, but no.
Took many tries, but they're getting there.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, it is not easy to make an operating system.
It's a lot of open source sort of crowd developed stuff that has just millions and millions and millions of man hours put into it. That does do a better job, though.
Yep. But it's actually nowhere near as easy to use for the average person. There is
No,
a lot of...
I was talking specifically GNOME.
Oh.
GNOME Foundation's work.
you still need to know more than the average. And I mean, Gnome's getting easier, but it's still not Windows easy.
It's
for the
easy until
average
you get
user.
error messages, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, here's an error message. You better be a programmer. 'Cause that's really who that operating system was made for originally. They haven't gotten much beyond that yet. They've made it easier for us to use.
Oh, they made it wonderful for us to
Yeah,
use.
it's so much
And,
nicer than it used to be. Oh my god, I can't even tell you. Like, I remember the days of Linux when you were installing it, you had to manually enter all of your monitor's refresh and pixel information, and as soon as you were done, Linux would just go, "Oh, so it should be able to do this." And if it couldn't do that, you could fry your monitor. You could actually destroy your monitor by putting in bad numbers as you installed the operating system, and that is not user-friendly by any stretch of the imagination. If you
And
can
if you're
melt down,
if you're ever missing that experience, just go install Gentoo. Or Arch from scratch. I mean, both good options.
I mean, that's Arch is the evolution of what I used to run, so that's probably why I don't run Linux anymore.
Because you were doing it on hard mode.
Oh,
But no, as soon as Valve gets BattleEye and Easy Anti-Cheat working on Linux by Windows, I'm done.
and if I could do all of my gaming on Linux, I would probably run Linux too, as long as OBS still played nice, which, as I understand it, mostly does.
I would say like 90%, 95% does. About
Yeah.
as nice as it does with Windows.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty good project. It's probably 95% on Windows, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm happy. Okay. So, now that we've geek spilled for a little bit and all of chat, whoever's there is going, I don't know what they're saying.
We have a couple programmer viewers. They might get it.
We do. I'm actually super pleased with the technical knowledge of about half of our viewers. And I'm super pleased that it's like half, and the other half aren't as super techie, so we can teach people little techie things as we go, and then teach everyone about games.
It's a good time.
Games are fun. So, shall we talk about a fun game?
Sure.
Then I guess we're talking about Yakuza 4.
I would say Fury, but
Yakuza 4 was fun. I had a lot of fun playing that one. It was nicely paced.
it wasn't just playing with children for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
There's no fucking daycare in it at all. It was lovely.
No, trying to save up, scrimp up money for a taxi ride.
They did not pay me enough to be a daycare daddy. Seriously, like I'm doing daycare. I'm like, I paid for this? Don't I usually get paid to do daycare? Like, come on, game.
No, just the virtual chore simulator is, you know, the whole genre that Harvest Moon, Stardew, you know.
They're just
It's
trying
the
to
games
cash
that-
in.
The games that piss off parents around the world, where the kids won't do, you know, the real chores, but they'll go and sit in front of the TV or computer and do virtual chores. I was one of those kids.
Go do your chores. No. What are you doing? Weeding. Yeah, that's absolutely a thing. Absolutely a thing. Yeah, I had to be bribed to go do my chores in real life too. And I'd rather play video games. Go to the yard. No. I'll give you $20. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Go mow the lawn. Buy 3 packs of magic cards. That's
Worth.
how that went. And that's why I have so many magic cards. All right. Oh, hey, you know what we didn't do? That's what's missing. So I got all the videos done. I got the titles done. I got the titles done everywhere. Everything looked really good. The video was even set to the right setting. It's just the monitor broke itself. I blame it for that. So the one thing I didn't get is the share link and the spam. Have it do
Oh
monster.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Haven't seen the bot spamming yet.
I thought that shoulder was a helmet, and I was very confused. I'm like, what? What is that? And then I looked up. I'm like, oh,
It's a cyber demon, yo. Cyber demon.
I was like, what game is that? It's a funky looking helmet.
We need that quote. I thought that shoulder was a helmet. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Am I done Fury? I think I'm going to do the last boss in Fury.
Yeah,
It
you gonna go
crashed
find the
before-
last one?
It crashed before the last boss. Unless I have to. Like, do I just walk forward and it either ends or I find the boss?
I honestly don't remember. I think you just have to go find him.
But there's no ending without finding him?
I believe there is an ending without doing that boss.
Okay. Well, we'll go and we'll see if we get that ending or we get the last boss then. We'll just see what
Seems
comes out of it.
reasonable.
We got to finish the play. For whatever system, my system and drivers did not like that withery death effect. As soon as it
kept
started
crashing.
happening, it's just... Yeah, 2 fatal crashes in a row, and I was like, I'm done.
Ouch.
As soon as
Video
I-
game's over.
As soon as I took a step, it was just like, no. Okay, cool. If you say so, game. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to look at timers, panel, edit, bam, follow along. Here. Find Yakuza 4 here.
Oh. Yeah, Yakuza 5 is next.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then Darkwood.
Nioh 2 Remastered here.
I love Darkwood.
I didn't share that one. Yeah, I know absolutely nothing about Darkwood. I've never even looked at it. So I'm kind of curious to get to it and play it.
It is how you say spooky AF.
Yeah.
There you go.
The cover art would always pop up on Steam for me. That thing freaks me out.
Yeah, I noticed the cover art was super creepy. I was like, ooh, you look interesting. Isn't it top down, though?
Yeah. It's by far the most terrifying 2D game I have ever seen.
Right on. I look forward. And then Meteor Fall is a card game roguelite.
Probably taking influence from Slay the Spire, question mark?
Hopefully. Let's go with hopefully, because Slay the Spire was awesome. And then we have Doom Eternal's DLCs, and then Bloodborne, and then Dragon's Dogma.
You get 2 challenging things after that, and then Dragon's Dogma.
Bloodborne won't be super challenging. It's just a lore percent run.
I'm
Not
no
doing
restrictions.
Like a PL4 or anything like that.
And I do all your leveling.
I've walked all over that game more than a few times. I don't expect too much difficulty. I mean, I'll still die a few times, but it's not like I'm going to die like 30 times on one thing. It might kill me once, and then I'm just going to come back and be like, ha-ha! Ha-ha!
We are become Roberto.
Man, it's been a while since I spammed
Hey, that's what I
Roberto.
should do. I should name my character in Dark Souls Roberto.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Then I can
Do some
go.
stabbing.
Then I can go Dex and take the twin blades and go around stabbing everything. I could even get them early. And hey, did I say hey Rubido? I think I said hey Rubido. Hey Rubido, I think I said it already though. But yeah, you can get those Blades of Mercy like super early. I accidentally
pretty
did it
early.
on my last playthrough. You can get them right. What?
I know how you get them early.
Aww. I did. Yeah, I think you did. Yeah. I think you did is to saying hello because I didn't stream that playthrough, so no one would know that. Bloodborne.
What game? Bloodborne. The Blades of Mercy is the weapon that we're talking about, and the only way to get it early is to kill my favorite character.
Well, to get her killed anyway.
Yeah, one or the other.
I did it
Although
accidentally.
the earliest way is to kill her.
Well, to get her killed. I guess you can just kill her even earlier, yeah. That would be the earliest. The easy early way is to do it after Papa G. No, they're merciful.
Not quite
They
ironically.
They're truly merciful. And we can get into that when we find the weapon in the game.
Oh yeah, it's lore percent, so we will be talking about all the backstory on the weapons and what they mean and
Where they
stuff
came
like that.
from, why they're named, what they're made out of, the significance of the material they're made out of, stuff like that. The game really does go that deep. There's significance to the material that the weapons are made out of that helps you unravel the story. It's a really just that's the best game ever made. There's so much depth to it. Everything is interconnected. Everything is thought out. Everything is planned. Everything has meaning. I've never seen anything to that depth and level. Hidetaka, you fucking mad genius.
I'm excited to see what happens
Elden Ring?
with the Elden Ring.
Oh yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm excited to see absolutely any game that man puts his stamp on from this point to the infinite future. Even if his next 10 games are crap somehow, I'm still looking forward to that game because I know what can come out of his mind when he does it right. That man is a true artist. Good Lord, that man is an artist. Okay. Yakuza 4 world building. Get someone killed to get them, but can I ride my horse on the ceiling? No, he doesn't.
If there were a horse, you probably could. Elden Ring implies that you may be able to ride a horse on the ceiling.
We see, I was going to say no because it's not a TES game.
Except that horses do some things that horses aren't supposed to do in the Elden Ring trailer.
That's cool. That's cool. I look forward to it actually doing that. But typically, if I'm thinking horses on the ceiling, I'm thinking TES.
It's true. It's true.
Have there been From games that have mounts? I'm trying to think.
Not yet.
Don't think so.
Do mechs count?
No.
Let's correct that. Let's correct that. We're not asking From games. We're asking Hidetaka games. Because we only really care about From after Hidetaka took the lead.
Yeah, but even though I'm just thinking how that's gonna Yeah, because it's gonna get interesting. We'll see how they handle that, because mounts is something that I don't know if any game's really done it done it well.
Yeah,
Give
well,
the player a lot of power to go and do things they're probably not supposed to.
I definitely
Physics could also get
trust.
hard.
I definitely trust him to do it right. He's really good at incorporating mechanics into games, like really good.
Sparrow flying in Destiny 2. You mean Sparrow colliding and ramping. Sparrow ramping was my favorite part of that game.
I invented that.
And the fact that I broke.
I mean,
the
other
video
people did
game.
it. Other people did it before, I'm sure, but amongst us, I invented that. And sent Rage fucking flying, and he went, "Oh, let's do that again." Side dodging cancels downward momentum. Oh. My.
That's almost enough to get me to reinstall the game.
So what we were doing is we would fly two sparrows at each other, and one of them boosts, which pulls the back end up right as the other one stops right before it hits, which puts the nose down, and then it hits it like a ramp, and literally we were launching these sparrows all the way across like massive open fields, getting so much air. All you can see is this little speck flying off into the distance of the air as Rage takes off on his sparrow. Oh, it took two people timing it perfectly, but man, you could get a good launch.
You could go so far.
Oh, okay. Let's get on track, because already we're going to be going to like almost 7 if we were to do a proper show. Yeah, because of 4 remastered world building.
It's kind of the same thing with the previous Yakuza games. I mean, it takes place in Kamurocho.
Yep.
Not a whole lot changes.
It doesn't go as many other crazy places as the last game.
Yeah. It still does a good enough job, building its own isolated, little bubble of story and lore that's kind of going on.
I'm going to argue it's better building for not going all over the place. They didn't need more locations. The story is deep enough in one place. The world is developed.
The question that I have about that, though, is because we're reusing the same sort of setting that we have in so many other Yakuza games, are they just relying on that? Do we think that they did enough? Like, if this was the first game that somebody stepped into, that they would understand Kamurocho?
I think so. As much as you would in the first game. You'd be a little more lost than, like, I've played the other 3, I'm playing the 4th one. Kamurocho is literally like a second skin to me. But there's still enough different that, it's like a second skin to me, and then you'll go somewhere that and it's a different store, and you're like, oh. Right. Yeah, time has changed.
It's always a bit of a strange category when we're reviewing them from, like, 0 onwards to here, because they all do kind of build off the same area, but it's still based off, like, real world, and it's not, too far into fantasy where it doesn't take a whole lot to kind of, reference for a player to kind of get reference and kind of get situated to, what it is, what's going on. It's mostly comes down to what they've inserted into their reference, which is, the Yakuza underworld and, the people in it. And most of the games, they build off the ones before, so you can get a little lost and confused because you don't understand certain characters, what they're like, or what happened before. But for the most part, they do a decent job of kind of catching you up of, like, what happened before, and they have references in writing to, what's kind of going on, and none of them are too far gone that you'll be completely confused. You can kind of play the games out of order. It's not super recommended, but it's not like, you have no idea who's who, and it relies on you to have information from previous games to be able to continue and to be able to actually, like, do the mechanics. It is, still very much just cut scenes with some punching in between. And most of the stories, they don't really, you don't have to buy part 2 and get to, like, the next one to figure out, the ending of the first one. They are at least still kind of self-contained. And this one especially, because it introduces a bunch of new characters, and their kind of stories and backgrounds aren't in previous things. There's some references, but it's more kind of contained than the other ones, where it's pretty much a new cast.
Yeah.
They all kind of have their own story going on, and it kind of still wraps it up a bit nicely.
Actually, you know what? They do go to some other places in this one. They take you to the prison. They show you the secret prison. They do a little bit on Kiryu's island? A little bit.
Not very much.
Not
thankfully.
not enough to drive you insane or make you hate the game. Just enough to be like, hey, here's Kiryu.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then you're like, oh, the Ubermensch is back.
Right before they actually let you play as him again. And I do really like the new cast of characters. We're not at characters yet, but I think it was pretty good world building. I don't think I would want them to do more. There's enough there, like Pseudo said. If it's your first time, you will learn the places and the locations. If you haven't played the previous games and you're playing this one, at worst, you may not get the reference. It's not going to break the story, but you may not get the reference. They'll still explain who the character is eventually. It's just if you've played the other games, the moment you see that character, you're going to be like, oh. But they're still going to explain who that character is eventually.
Yeah, and as I was saying before, since it's kind of, referencing real-world areas and Kamurocho is still the same, and it's not really too far into fantasy, they don't really have to explain too much of what the world is. You kind of can just do it as what you would in real life if you're a tourist. You're walking around exploring, and there's enough going on in the world that kind of tells you that. The only kind of issue with that is that's what's been kind of used in the previous game, so it's like they're using what's before, but I think it's a system that they've had that's fine. I don't know if I'd really, call that bad, and they've just kind of had decent world building since, or besides kind of three took a little bit of a hit, but the first couple ones, they did a good job of, presenting a world that's, in that balance between realistic, but, got a lot of kind of fictional stuff entwined into it. But if you go around, paying attention, it kind of fills in the gaps pretty quickly onto like what it is you're in and what's going on around you, and the time frame, the time and spacing and all that stuff. They make it sure it's consistent. It's I can't find any too much fault in it. I do like it when they make brand new areas to go to, but that's not always a requirement. That can also be a bit of a detriment.
Yep, I'm actually really, really love the dynamic that they have, where every time I play a new Yakuza game, I know where I'm going to be, but I don't know where everything's going to be. I'm kind of curious to go and see the changes that have happened over these years that have been in game time. It's like coming back to your hometown that you moved away from, and getting to see all these familiar places with all your great memories and see how the place has evolved and changed, and check out the new shops and meet the new people there.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to put it. It's kind of like they have like a frame, and then they just put in, over the years everything changes, but overall the structure and everything is still the same. But the actual kind of inside bits and everything that pulls everything together is actually what changes, and they are fairly distinct from game to game because they do take place over different decades. You go from 80s to 90s and onwards.
Yep. I've gone from the 80s to the 2000s in Kamurocho now. I've seen it evolve. That pawn shop has been there for a long time. Not all the shops have been there for a long time, but that pawn shop is a staple in Kamurocho. It's been there. That and the Kalbi place, the high-end South Korean barbecue.
Oh, I love Kelby.
Yeah. That place has been there for a long time, too. I've even met some famous people there before. Like I can talk about this place like it's just a location that I've lived in and had experiences in. I'm going to argue that's pretty damn good world building.
Yeah, it's definitely at minimum an okay. I would definitely not say that it is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like they did more work for the world building in previous games, but I wouldn't argue too hard against a good for world building.
I think the amount they did is the right amount. I think too much muddies it.
I agree, and I think while like 2, I felt like had a lot more world building in it, a lot more setting up of Kamurocho and the rest of your setting. What they had in 4 is very much appropriate.
Yeah. They do ignore some areas of the city maybe because you've already explored it so much before. I don't think that takes away from 4. I think that just helps you if you've played the other 3 already. You're not just going to the same areas all the time, doing the same things all the time. You go to new places, you check out new places, you see new areas of the city. It's nice.
where like I said before, like, where a bunch of the world building kind of comes from is that they did introduce, you know, a bunch of new protagonists, and they had to, you know, fill in their backstories and what's kind of going on with them, and through that is where a lot of the world building kind of happened for this one. Like I said, there's the prison. You know, a lot of the, it's still Kamurocho, but they're still filling in, you know, a bit more of that history, a bit more of what the world is, and you don't need a lot of, you know, that prerequisite knowledge from the previous games, and that's something that doesn't really happen in the previous Yakuza games. You just kind of just had Kiryu, and then maybe you had Majima, but they don't always kind of dive into too much of Majima's past. But when you have these new characters and they have a bit of a past to them, and it shows where they come from and all that kind of stuff, it does expand the world a little bit that way. Even if it's not a new place, it's just kind of still giving you a bit of history and a bit of, you know, why you're here and kind of what's going on. But overall, it's like I said, I'm on the fence between good and okay. I wouldn't have any, you know, arguments against either. You know, there's still a lot more they could really do to, you know, like good world building to me is like this, you know, not really vast, but this, you know, dense area with just so much, you know, bleeding through that you want to just go through and explore and absorb as much as you can, and you feel like it's this place that you want to go to, and you can say the name and it's like, oh yes, this place, you know, this world that they've created. And Kamurocho is kind of that world, but it's one of those weird cases where it's because of, you know, 7 or 8 games it's spanned through that have, you know, it's the result of 7 or 8 games of world building, not really just because of 4.
Yeah.
But, you know, on the fence of either one, I wouldn't really argue against both. I still think that the way they handled new protagonists and, you know, not really jumping the shark too much and adding a bunch of new areas that they kind of come from, still kind of keeping them Kamurocho is, you know, takes quite a bit of effort, and I think they did it fairly well.
Yeah, like I said, if they change Kamurocho too much, it ruins it. It needs to be just that right level of adjustment for the eras, and I think they nailed it. Is world building always harder after enough sequels in the same universe because you need to strike a balance between showing the world to folks who haven't played the game, but not losing established fans because you're reintroducing the same places? Yes, 100%.
Definitely. Harder may not be the most appropriate word. Like maybe more difficult.
I was thinking more difficult as well.
But
Get out of my head!
That is definitely something that you need to consider, is not alienating your existing player base while also making sure that any new players that are captured by the games understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to reference another absolute genius of world building, Hidetaka Miyazaki, who managed to rescue Dark Souls 2 and tie it back into the first game, and then built Dark Souls 3 to tie the other 2 games together. All of which are individually
Does Dark Souls 3 tie 1 and 2 together? My understanding is 3 is tied to 1 and 2 is tied to 1, but 2 and 3 have no relation.
It's tied in much the same way as 1 is. You will see references to 2.
Yeah. Okay, because the actual continuation or the continuity of that story is 2 is the dark ending and 3 is the light fire ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the ability to tie that all together is something that is incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah, I think he made the right choice by saying 2 never happened in 3's story. 2 is the alternate ending of 3, and then being able to just take 3 in his own direction and ignore what happened in 2.
The Legend of Zelda approach.
Yeah.
this split timeline.
But it's I've never actually seen it done where the first game has 2 endings and the 2 sequels carry on the 2 different endings to show you what happened in each ending, which was really creative.
Yeah. Fucking genius. Genius.
Yeah. Guy's a master. Masterclass. So, like you were saying, the world building kind of ties into the characters, so that brings us into the characters, which is really the strongest category, I think, of Yakuza 4.
I mean, we can just say straight up good from the get-go. The characters are amazingly well written in this game.
Yeah, it's the mainstay of Yakuza games. It's the main reason why people play them. And when the characters kind of falter a bit, it becomes very obvious. Out of 3, Yakuza 3's characters, you know, while still, you know, decent, they started slow, and it just, you know, all of a sudden the whole experience just starts to kind of fall apart for most people. Or just overall in general, just because, you know, it is kind of, you know, the main foundational point of this game. You know, most games will have foundational mechanics to them, and that is, the characters and the writing. And the moment that's kind of faltering, everything built on top of it, isn't going to be as strong. It's like the weakest link kind of thing in a chain.
Absolutely. Completely agree. And as we've said in every Yakuza review, it really is all about the writing and the characters. And 4 is no exception. And the characters are just absolutely excellent.
Yeah, and especially since there's the addition of new characters. Like there's, I think, the 3 new protagonists.
And I loved all the new protagonists. I thought they were all great.
Yeah,
Not just the new protagonists. The side characters were also really well.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where like you kind of fall into a pattern with Yakuza games where you just play as the Ubermensch, right? You're Kiryu, you're doing this, and Kiryu's also just like a moral god. He's just that complete pillar of what the kind of the perfect person should kind of be, even though he's dark past and he's a criminal. He's still like a very, very redeemable, very righteous. And when you start introducing new protagonists, they had Majima, but he's kind of like a complete contrast and a complete opposite.
He's a wild
still,
card.
Yeah, but still, righteous, but he's also, not really. He's just a complete chaotic neutral. You don't know what he's going to do next. And
yes, chaotic neutral is exactly how to describe him.
And then Kiryu is very much a lawful good, and people like to think that chaotic evil can be right against it, but no, I think chaotic neutral is way against lawful good, because there's just that thing of just complete anarchy.
What?
Knowing what's going to happen next is completely different from that structure of exactly know what they want to do, their codes that they have, and they live by things. And when you're at evil, you still have kind of a code by things. Evil doesn't mean you're doing things because you're just straight up evil. You're still doing things for a reason. And if you're chaotic, a lot of times there's just no reason. You're just complete impulse.
Yeah, chaotic is typically breaking the law for the reason of breaking the law. It's kind of where chaotic's at.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely no regard given to the law at all. No, chaotic's beyond that. No regard given to the law is kind of neutral. You don't really care about the law. You follow it when it meets your needs. You don't follow it when it doesn't. Kind of, that true rogue mentality of whatever's best for me at this moment is the neutral. Chaotic is really
chaotic
fuck
neutral
law!
is
Joker is chaotic.
chaotic neutral in my mind is just entirely impulse driven.
Yeah.
Completely impulse driven.
Not even aware of laws. They just don't even think about them. They just do what they want, and if they've so happened to break laws, then it's not even on their mind. Shit just happens.
That's kind of neutral too, though.
No, chaotic is there's that no structure, right?
Yeah.
Chaotic is
I mean, neutral
not
doesn't
direct,
care about laws either. It's I'll break them when it suits me.
But they're aware of them. Like neutral is you're aware of laws and you break them for purposes. Chaotic is just complete impulse. Not even really. Like you can be aware and break, but they don't really break them on purpose. It's just they just completely do whatever it is that they want to do right now, regardless of any sort of restraints.
My perfect encapsulation of chaotic is always the Joker.
Yeah, exactly. Entirely impulse driven.
Yeah, but he will straight up just go out and break a law to break the law. Law says don't do this. Oh, does it.
I'm going to go carry a horse into Nevada or whatever those stupid laws are.
It is still illegal in Victoria, British Columbia to walk around at night after sundown if you have a woman with you and you don't have a sword on your belt. But I don't think lawful equals follows laws. No, lawful 100% follows laws. It's just they follow the laws of the area. They may be the ones making the laws. Like if you ever want to think lawful evil, think Darth Vader.
It's like a system of rules mostly, not like a judge and justice. It's more of just a rules and code.
Yeah.
There's something that binds them. There's restrictions in place that they follow. And that's what that is.
Yeah.
And when you're lawful, it means that you are so bound to those that you're never going to break them. That's why like paladins usually always have to be lawful because that's where the whole thing comes from, is they need to be, Anyways, we've gone pretty off topic, but my point was is that
just a little
Kiryu
bit.
is bound completely by rules. Majima is completely chaotic, and it's not easy, but to have those two things play off each other is something that can be done with a bit of freedom, whereas if you have all these other protagonists, you know, you kind of have to mix them in and kind of have, you know, personalities for them. But, you know, you can't always just have complete mirror characters and contrast them together and be like, look at this silly stuff that happens when we put two opposites in a room. It's, you know, a lot more depth has to be put into them. And I think, you know, this is something that stands up from the other Yakuza games is you usually just have Kiryu, or you usually just have, you know, one or two protagonists. You have quite a few in this, and it's from the first starting into that style of, you know, having other playable characters and still having the game be fun and not falling out of that formula where you feel like all of a sudden, you know, I want to just the uber binge and feel like I'm just the strongest thing. You can still kind of have that fantasy a bit, but still have, you know, a different flavor and a different hat being worn when you're actually playing the game.
So
Yeah, and I did like while they did still have the whole Ubermensch in there, you got a chance to play characters that are not the Ubermensch. Like you got to play the Rapscallion, you got to play the well-meaning but misunderstood, down on his luck guy. You got to play the Bruiser, who is just basically Doom guy in Japan. Like,
yeah, he even looked like Japanese Doom guy.
He's too angry to die. But like, they're just really, really well done, and allowing you to play as all those different characters and then bringing Kiryu back in, I thought was great.
And again, going back to the world building, I wanted to tie it in a little bit to the characters as we were talking about them, because they are kind of related. They used these new characters to explore new areas of Kamurocho, to go into new places, to meet new people, to understand the underlying social structure of different areas. And it was just organic and beautiful, the way it was done. I never felt jerked around. I never felt led around on a leash. I was just kind of giving people, but hey, you got to go find this. And then it leads you to the areas that you haven't seen before, like the new underground mall that even Kiryu was like, where the fuck did this come from? Which I thought was a beautiful touch. Yeah, it's characters and world building jammed together in this game. All good. Moving on. Storyline.
Storyline in Yakuza 4 was very anime and like had a very sort of simple plot line, but with a great deal of highly detailed and thought out embellishment around it.
That's accurate. I personally loved the story. It did keep me playing. And from a player's
sure.
standpoint, I was like, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next?
Yeah, it's where the new writer started to kind of fall into his style. The older, like, previous games, it's more like a drama. It was more like a, you know, kind of a Japanese drama or a soap opera with a bunch of, you know, action and stuff put in between, where this one, you know, the pacing was quite a bit different, and a lot of, like I said, the embellishments is really kind of what tied it together. And 3, it took a while to get kind of going and starting, but it started to kind of fall into a similar pattern. But 4 is when it really started, you know, this is the format that it should be done. This is the kind of formula that, you know, things started to kind of fall together. And it starts off, you know, pretty strong, and it holds through and keeps people, you know, not entranced, but, you know, keeps people engaged. It keeps the pacing well all the way through. There's still a lot of stuff going on, but it's not as kind of dramatic and slow as other ones can kind of be. It does kind of go through, and I prefer this style more. Like from 4 onwards is just kind of, you know, it's there's I'm not sure if you know this or not, but there's like 5 or 6 hours of cutscenes in this game, and it doesn't feel like it.
No, it didn't feel like that at all.
It's like 4 or 5 hours of just cutscenes, I believe, and it's one of those things where it's like, even before previously, sometimes it can feel like certain things go on. It's, you know, they could have been condensed a bit, and a lot of stuff was done just for drama. But this one is a bit more, you know, a lot of stuff is purposeful. You know, not a whole lot of a lot of games. There's still filler in the side of things, but the actual writing, a lot of it's purposeful, and a lot of stuff that was shown. I really kind of appreciated the way they're doing things in this series from then on.
Yeah,
for sure.
I felt like they got
think of the Yakuza series, I think of this style of writing. Where you're sort of experiencing an anime plot, but as a video game. Whereas the first couple of games are more, like you mentioned, Asian style drama writing as opposed to an anime.
Yeah, I feel like he got his meat and potatoes right in this one. That's the big difference between 3 and 4. The sauce is pretty much the same. The sauce is fairly consistent across a lot of Yakuzas. Slight changes, consistent sauce. The meat and potatoes were not right in the last one. Got an undercooked steak. Or an overcooked steak. Some people don't think there's an undercooked steak, so we got an overcooked steak. That was the problem. And a black potato. As soon as I tried to eat that black potato
didn't deserve this.
As soon as I tried to eat that black potato, we went flush. That was not happening. Yeah.
You don't like charcoal?
I don't like chewing on charcoal, but I'm gonna call this storyline good unless you guys argue against me, because I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It kept me pushing on and on and on and on. Every time I was given an action scene, I was like, "Ooh, I want more story." And it never let down. It didn't. It was always good. So I'm never disappointed. The whole game.
Yeah. I have no arguments against that.
Strong from start to finish. Used all the areas that you want to see, changed them up just enough, explored it with different characters, gave you background. It's beautiful. Performance.
Did anybody play this at release?
Specifically the remastered one. It says remastered in the title. We gotta look at the remastered one. I mean, it ran fabulous on my system.
But when was Yakuza 4 Remastered released?
Fairly recently, actually.
It's a pretty new game, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's like 2018. Could be later than that.
No,
though.
it's much newer than that. 2021 on Steam, I believe. And
Oh,
on Game
really?
Pass
Wow.
before
Initial
then.
release.
Yeah, it's like
Oh, that's not the remastered. Yeah, it's a 4.
yeah, it would have been maybe it was 2021. They're very recent. The last they released 4, 5, and 6, I think, at once. They did 1, 2, and 3 over a couple of years, and then they released the other remasters kind of in a big bulk.
Big pack, because they didn't have to do as much remastering, probably.
Man,
Yeah, it's
Google's search information really sucks nowadays.
yeah, we were going from PS2 era tech and writing and mechanics to modern, which is quite the jump. But when you're going from a previous generation to current generation, there's not as much that needs to be kind of redone. There's a lot of stuff that's done previously due to just limitations, or even just it was the time of the era. Like, even if you go and play a lot of PS2 games nowadays, you'll be like, I remember these being better, and it's like it's just because how things were back then. You didn't know how good things are now until you go back and it's a wild west of game design. We were still figuring out a lot of stuff.
I watch somebody play PS2 regularly, so I'm frequently looking at it going, I don't remember it being that bad.
Yeah, there's a lot. Even if you go back to like generations further, when you go like N64 and stuff like that, there's a lot of mechanics that you're just like you don't remember them because they weren't fun. If something's not at that threshold too far, you'll I'm looking for.
I do remember N64 being that bad. Just for the record.
Yeah, there's certain things that'll stand out, but I mean, like in your favorite games from those eras, there's a lot of mechanics that you kind of just forget about if they're not too egregious that they caused you pain. Then you go back to play them, you're like, oh, this is kind of just annoying. Like the long travel times between in like open world games first started being a thing. Travel times, were a problem. It still is a problem, and then you have to think that it used to be worse. If you think things are bare now, try having the technology restriction back then. They were really bare. And there wasn't a whole lot of music either. There's just
no music, no fast travel
for a while.
Barely any foliage to make over the draw distance. Just running across a flat square for 20 minutes to get to where you want to be.
Anyways, for performance, I'm looking into it, and it looks like there was performance issues on launch, but it seems like they patched those fairly quickly. And I think by the time that you played it, which is still only within the year it was released, so I'd still say performance has probably improved quite a bit if you weren't running into any significant issues. Even though your machine is at the very top end, it's still a good sign that there wasn't any performance issues, because if you're running into stutters or weird performance issues when you have that top end hardware, then no matter what, low or below, it's going to still experience issues. But
100% agree. That's kind of where we're at. Like, if you run it on the top end hardware, runs fucking great. That's kind of what we can say. Looking into it, as long as you meet the specs, should run great. That's all there is to it. It seems fairly well made. But it ran fantastic for me. No crashes, no slowdown, no skips, no bugs, no anything. Just perfectly smooth frames.
yeah. And at that part, when it becomes just a hardware and power restriction, that's kind of just across the board, across almost, most games, you're going to run into that issue anyways of just, you have a hardware limitation and you turn the settings down and hopefully it matches it. But I mean, as long as there is a benchmark where it will run perfect, then that's a good metric to hit.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got a potato, there's only so much people can do to make it work on a potato. We are working within the laws of physics still. Animation, we're probably still at an okay on this. It hasn't changed much.
No.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment. Hasn't really been too much of an improvement. Okay. Movement's still a little stilted. Combat animations kind of suck if they aren't the canned animations.
A lot of interrupting. It's just that kind of style they fell into, and didn't really seem to be a priority to them for a while. And these are remasters, so would be kind of difficult for them to improve animations without having to do kind of a mechanic overhaul.
Yeah, it's still a
It's just
PS3 animation level.
Kind of. It's mostly just the mechanics based of just the beat 'em up without having those smooth transition points.
Yep.
And without kind of having smooth transitional combat, there's only so much you can do with an animation, There's, for what they have is, very good. It's just there's a limitation that's in there that would require too much of an overhaul, which is something we start seeing in 5 and 6 when the combat system starts to change a bit and they start incorporating a bit more of the real-time kind of physics-based animations when you punch people. They're not just, I fall over. It's you actually just send them.
We play 5 next. I can't wait.
Yeah, and then, it's some changes. I'm not going to say it's, improved a whole lot, but you can still see that at least they're working towards that.
I will say this as a caveat to the animation's okay. I would much rather have the animation come out as an okay and play just like all the previous games than have them try to improve the animation quality and muddy the controls because they're trying to have all the animations finish, which is what usually ends up happening when people try to finish their animations, and it plays worse that way. I'd rather have a slightly janky animation and have it play well.
Yeah, it's something to note as well that an okay doesn't mean it's, anything bad or anything
No.
detracting from it. Like, most games should have, a focus where everything should be good, and then the rest of it should, be a mix of goods and okays. Not every game should be aiming to be a perfect good across the board for these kind of categories. It's not like a test where there's a 10 out of 10 that you have to hit every time. It's just how games are, and, time, budget, and restrictions are there, and even just the playable of games. There's a lot of people who would much prefer this okay style of combat and animations than to have it be pushed to what we would view kind of as that, good. It's just, preference and style is part of art. There's not really a finite curve of what the best should be. It still boils down to, the overall experience.
Yep, and like we've always said, okay is solid. Okay is completely playable. Okay is actually okay. It's okay. It's good.
Yeah, it's totally okay.
It's not the best it's ever going to be, but yeah, totally playable. Not going to ruin your experience.
Like we've loved games, absolutely loved games that got okay on like almost every category.
It's like most of my favorite games are like barely scratch that good category. It's like good when the thing that I like them for, and then everything else is okay. Like I go across my most played, and you look at a game like Kenshi, and the stuff that it's good for, it's really good for. And then everything else is like very solidly and okay, but it doesn't really need to be great. It could be nice, but then Kenshi probably would have never existed. It's just how things in the real world work. But it's, it's not a bad thing. Its animations and graphics aren't really the best. They're pretty dated, but it turns out that's not really required for what Kenshi actually is under the hood. So, it doesn't always need to have to hit this 10 out of 10 mark to actually be a good game.
Yeah. Big agree. Game journalists and studios stop trying to buy high-end ratings and just let people review games properly so that the people that like the area that your game does well can go buy your game. Yeah. There you go. I said
it's also a problem with like giving a summation grade for a video game, because there's like we've broken down the game into many categories. We could add more.
Yeah.
This is not an exhaustive list. It's just the stuff that we identified as things that will make or break a video game for a large portion of people.
Yeah, so you can decide what you like. Is the style still good? I think the style's still pretty good. I really like the styles.
Yeah, I like what they've done with the new characters. I like the style of them, and not a whole lot has changed in Kamurocho from like time frame wise. It's only a year after 3, but they still stay consistent. Overall the experience of the game is still consistent. They didn't try to do anything too new and fancy. They didn't try to flex on anything and put a bunch of inconsistencies in there. I still like the overall game of the style. I couldn't really detract too much from it. It's one of those things where they're hitting a formula well. And as long as they don't try to stray too far and do anything too crazy, as long as they still adding new things and keeping things still fresh and not just, completely pulling off the previous entry and just riding the coattails of that, then it's going to be hard for me to really kind of say anything negative about them.
And just from the technical standpoint that we do always try and talk about when we get to style, because style is something that can be very objective. It is very consistent. You can easily identify areas that you are in while they are still all distinct. It's well done.
Yep. Every district is its own little city district. Definitely part of it is I've been to that city before, but you can drop me into an area of that city and I know where I am. There's no Anor Blando. Anor Blando is one of my new reference points, which is the nickname of the last area in, what was that game? The Code Vein.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
If you've ever seen...
I was unsure where you were going with that, and then you said Code Vein, and I was like, oh, yeah.
If you've seen the last area of Code Vein, that is 100% Anor Blando. It looks like they were going for an Anor Londo theme, but it's just the exact same room of Anor Londo attached to itself 1,000 times.
It's super bland.
It's the whole area. Yeah, that's bad style. Where we're literally like, without the map, you can drop yourself into a room and you have no idea where you are because they literally are all the exact same room, just connected over and over again. Musical score, okay?
Yeah, it was fine.
As with all...
The mood music gives you the mood. The combat music is combative. Is that the anime Souls-like?
Yes.
Kind of. Yes. Like,
Yes.
if that's probably what you're referring to it as, I would argue that it's not very Souls-like, but...
It's more Souls-like than a lot of the games that people call Souls-like.
Still not super Souls-like.
It has Soulsy combat. That's usually what we refer to those games as. Soulsy combat. There's a difference. It's like trying to call every FPS a Doom clone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did like
moving
it, though,
combat music
overall.
is there. The music never pulls you out of the game or scene. Background, but fitting. Okay, voice acting. Good.
10 out of 10. Done.
Always an easy category for these. It's hopefully always an easy category. So far it has been. The day that it's not, it's going to be very obvious. Kind of going back to characters and writing. It's like I said, 5 hours or so of cutscenes.
Give me a date.
Most of the time that you're in there, that's what you're going to be doing. And once that, if it was to falter, or if the performances weren't quite there or weren't quite believable, then the kind of experience will start to get kind of jagged. But yeah, it's always a center stone for this franchise. It's just the writing, the characters, and then the performances given to them by their cast.
I gave sound effects a quick okay. The game has sound effects that basically sound like a thing.
I think, yeah, they're
Nothing
nothing super
samey,
fancy.
little overused.
Very arcade is a style that the fighting is. It's arcade, and that's what kind of the music and the sound effects go for. It's just arcade style. It's there,
And
it's
it's-
good enough, but
it's
what we
fine.
need. don't need anything special. Slight tangent on voice acting. I wanted to just touch on why you just fill in AI because it's also kind of the same as the previous ones. I think that's one big generational leap that people forget about between like PS2 era games and now is the actual like budgets, and not just that, but the for the longest time, voice acting and actual actors didn't take video games too seriously as a performing art.
Yeah.
Mostly because it hadn't been yet, right? It hadn't really been done yet, and the technology wasn't really there. Once we started getting motion capture and the ability to really, like, you could give the best performance you could vocally, but at the end of the day, it was still a low poly face with a mouth going. And
Wait! Don't open that door.
And like even if you had like a best thing and just not having it match up, it could be a really good, like there's a lot of games that would do narration that had very good voice actors before they had, any sort of on-screen visual cues for talking, and they still did pretty well. But you'll still find like going back from like older games and retro and then going back to ones now, it's a huge leap in the actual quality of the performances, and it really kind of makes me appreciate like how good this game has been doing it even through the PS2 era. They still had performances, even if they didn't have the tech for it fully to match it. The performances still really made these characters be believable.
Yeah, and the like I mentioned in chat just now, Metal Gear Solid didn't even have the tech to make mouths move. The PS1 couldn't do it, but I would still say that that's probably one of the earliest examples I can think of really excellent voice acting.
Fun fact, those first PS1 models weren't 3D sculpted. They were actually vertexes placed into space and connected to be drawn. Imagine trying to draw your models by hand by placing points to create polys.
Trying to make a mouth move.
That's why PS1 looks like it does. Y3, Y4, and Y5 were all PS3, yes.
Yeah. But even like 1 and 2. And even like PS3 era, like you look at 360 PS3 era, I mean, there's still a lot of... It was really like PS4 and when we really started getting a lot of
mouth flaps.
Yeah.
Mouth flaps, but like it was driven a lot by like Naughty Dog style games where they're more like movies that you interacted with sometimes.
Yeah.
But it really started allowing people to take them a bit more seriously and allowing people with larger names to actually lend them out to games and not have to worry about getting 50-cent blood in the sand kind of level memes out of it.
That game was so bad it killed Car's Xbox.
One of the favorite games of the channel, Dark Souls 1, for instance, does not have mouth flaps.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that really, in my mind, in my personal opinion, the action genre didn't reach a viable level of hardware until the PS4. I don't really like action.
Does Bloodborne have mouth flaps?
It doesn't need it, but it can actually pull off the action at those frames.
Yeah, I don't know if
that's where action becomes viable on hardware in my mind. I don't like many action games prior to PS4. I don't. I like all JRPGs and SRPGs and 4X and turn-based strategy and stuff like that. That's my wheelhouse because that's the kind of thing that we had the power to do well.
PS1 had some good 2D action games. So did Super Nintendo. But
yeah, once in a while.
3D is...
I mean, even 16-bit era when you started to try to do even shmup 2D action and stuff, you get a ton of slowdown. Just trying to draw all the sprites on the screen. Like, we did not have the hardware and the power to do these things properly. We had to really cut corners, and it affected the gameplay and the style for me my entire life. Even when I was a little kid, I was like, this isn't right, I can do this better. I've literally been like this and critical of games my whole life. This is just who I am. Get it right, people. Accessibility.
This one is, I wouldn't really give it anything really more than an okay. It kind of, at least for the PC version, there's a lot of stuff that's there that's a bit more standard, but a lot of stuff that it could have improved on. Like there still is remapping and everything, but with controller remapping, the left analog stick can't be rebound, which is kind of like it's not a huge problem. But for someone, it could be, and it's just the standard that we're kind of setting for modern times. We should hopefully be able to rebound almost everything, Um, Unfortunately, sometimes it's an engine and technical limitation, but I mean, I can't really excuse that for a lot of the stuff. Um, they do have subtitles, not closed
Yeah, this
captions.
is at best an okay. I'm looking at it on PC Gaming Wiki, tabbing through the screenshots of the settings and
Luck-
looking at what they've got.
Luckily, the game is easy enough that for the most part you should be able to get through it. But if you're fighting yourself on the controls the whole time, it's not going to be a great experience.
Yeah, that's where the kind of like the full rebinding gets really important, is because not everyone plays on a traditional controller. Sometimes there are a lot of people have kind of a custom setup that allows them to work around any sort of limitation that might be in place traditionally with a standard controller. And if you can't rebind a certain thing, then you might not be able to have it work with your custom setup and stuff like that. So that's the only kind of tidbit on that. As for other things, I think like colorblind, I think this game does have quite a bit of color with it, but I'm not too sure if it's anything that would really be too much mechanic focused, because I think most of it is separated in UI elements as well once they're kind of identified as what they are. But it's still nice to see, at least filters and stuff put into place, or different display modes for, adjusting to that so that they don't just have to do what the default was.
Yeah, and on that note, I was very pleasantly surprised to see that Tarkov does have colorblind modes. But on the note of
Really? Tarkov had
Yakuza
I didn't
4
even notice.
Yeah,
They have-
it's
they
under
have a
the post
lot.
effects tab.
Yeah, they have-
They're actually really, really well done.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. They
Interesting.
address not just like one or two modes; they have quite a bit for it.
Interesting. Maybe I should jack it up so I can see contrast better.
Yeah, I highly recommend going in and tuning your post effects settings. I did mine as well, and actually, interestingly, ended up with a setup very similar to Pestiles. But yeah, on the topic of Yakuza 4, there isn't a ton of color that you need to know. A lot of the things that I'm thinking of that you would have problems with would be like signage in game. Probably really struggle with that. The contrast between character models in the background is generally pretty good.
Yep. It's like I
The
said,
UI
it's probably
elements
not going
are
to
okay.
interfere with too many people. Most people shouldn't have too much problem. And even if you do have minor problem, it's not a super high skill level game that's going to prevent you from progressing. It's just if you happen to be in the small minority of people that truly have an issue with the game, you're going to be left high and dry.
Yeah, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, but they did take steps, at least, to, the design side of it is fairly welcoming. It's not really limiting to who can play it. It's not Sekiro. Where if you don't have some fucking timing, good luck.
Yeah, if you don't have a great deal of finger dexterity, you can't play Sekiro.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at on it. Sorry, I'm trying to organize my dinner because I realized I slept in so much that I don't have a dinner ready.
No, I'll just take off on mechanics then.
Yeah, please do.
Kind of falls sweet with the standard thing. It's kind of one of those amazing things with the Yakuza series where they don't change a whole lot, but somehow they've managed to get 8 or 9 games that still feel fresh and relevant to play, and not feel like you're redoing the same things. And even though the main core concept stays the same, they kind of always either introduce new mini games, or they will swap out ones from previous games and put in they kind of like, they don't put them all into one, which would have kind of happened, with a lot of traditional style game design. It's like, well, we have all these things made, which just keep putting it in. But at that point, it can still be overwhelming. And while sometimes I miss that there isn't pool or billiards in a Yakuza game, it's still kind of nice that, when I get a new Yakuza game or I play next one in the series, you don't actually know what you're really going to get. And sometimes there'll be, new mini games. They still do a really good job on those. They are, for the most part, optional. Sometimes in the story and some side quests will make you do them. Just kind of most of the mechanics that boil down for Yakuza is just the beat 'em up and the fighting, and then the mini games, as well as, of course, the main part of just watching cutscenes and paying attention to the story, and some other kind of little tidbits thrown in there depending on what the side quests really do. And most of the side quests are optional, except for I can always mix them up in the point of I can't remember which Yakuza games force you to do side quests while you wait for, nighttime or daytime or something. But the ones that make you do aren't, you can do whichever ones you kind of just stumble upon. They're not really like always a super required one. And then for the main bread and butter, which is the combat, it is a bit better than what was 3. 3's AI, they tried to do a little bit of a different direction. And it's kind of noticeable where everything kind of just attacks you all the time. There's not really a behavior where it seems kind of silly, but you'll see in most arcade beat 'em ups that AIs will kind of just wait for their turn.
Yeah.
And the point of that is without that, you get overwhelmed because realistically, if you're fighting 4v1, you're just going to get everyone attacking you and stomping you at once. And that's why that doesn't really go well in a realistic setting. And same thing in movies, you'll see in a lot of, action movies and fighting movies, they're doing something. They look like they're doing something, but really what they're doing is waiting for their turn because realistically, if everyone attacks you at once, you just can't, unless you're just some like Ultra Instinct Goku who can just move at, unrealistic speeds. You're not going to be able to deal with that.
Jackie Chan.
So it's nice that they improve that. And the fighting is a bit more to that, previous arcade style, even though it, can seem a bit weird. Overall, it still just feels better.
Yeah, big agree. I'm at an okay on the mechanics in the game myself.
Yeah, and it's
solidly fine.
The new characters had different fighting styles, which is nice, and I could keep them a little bit different personality and different feeling when you're playing as something new. Keeps it a bit fresh rather than. I like that approach a bit more than just having the one character with many fighting styles, because then what I kind of find will happen is you fall into just your own personal meta of this is what I like to use, and then you kind of always use it, which, there's nothing wrong with that. It's still fun, but it's nice that through this kind of medium, you still get exposure to the different styles, and even though you may not like certain characters, a certain fighting style, it overall will keep the game, from getting a bit stale.
Yeah. Now that you bring it up, I really do prefer having different styles on different characters. It makes me think of Doom 2016 and the change they made going to Eternal, where they significantly lowered your ammo supply. And it forces you to actually use other weapons. Because in Doom 2016, I beat the game on Nightmare with basically only the super shotgun. But Doom Eternal forced me to actually, use the other guns and learn how to quick swap and learn how to, navigate my way around different areas and what weapons are the best for killing certain enemies. It's a much less brute force, much more technical approach to it. And I like that they were able to bring that in Yakuza 4 as well by, forcing you to use the other styles.
Big agree.
It's one of those things where it's nice to kind of like have that bit of forced contrast, even though, from a design standpoint, you're like, oh, I don't want to have to, force the player to not do something that's their favorite thing, but it just makes them appreciate their favorite thing even more. It's one of those things where if you always have your favorite food, it'll eventually, you'll get sick of it. And having a bit of balance that way where, like I said, in Doom Eternal, where you'll still have a favorite weapon, but you can't just always use it. It makes you just appreciate when you have to use it more, and it kind of just makes those, those moments a bit more, you're a bit more grateful and a bit more kind of, built up to it, as long as it's balanced. I mean, if it's to the point where you can rarely use it, then of course it's just frustrating and you're just like, just let me do what I want kind of thing, right? It's all very difficult to actually keep that balance. But I still prefer that.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
I barely used other styles in these games. Yeah,
I remember like Zero, I love it. And I love how there's the two different, fighting styles for each character. But then you'd still find that what would happen is you get Majima and you're like, all right, time to pull out the bat. or actually, I switched a fair bit for him because I liked the freestyle, the breakdancing one, because it was just broken. And then you'd switch to
the bat Kiryu was the best one-on-one, but the breakdancing was so good if you had multiple people around you that it's just... I swapped back and forth on Majima all the time in Zero.
Yeah.
Bugs seems to be a... Sorry, Pseudo, am I talking over you?
No, okay, continue. No, continue.
I was going to say, Bugs seems to be actually a good, based on what I'm seeing in PC Gaming Wiki. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of problems.
Yeah, what I was just going to say, I don't think Deus ran into anything really major on their playthrough. I don't know if there was really any crashes or anything similar to the other games before where you've like fallen off the rooftop and gone into like the ghost town.
Yeah, 3 was terrible for bugs. 3 was like bugging out every other quest that I did.
Yeah, and even some of the previous remasters, they didn't really get the full attention they really should have on the PC releases. I think this one still released with some kind of performance issues on launch and some stuff that got patched out. But some of the other ones before they would release, and there'd still be like crashes or weird visual issues, or you could kind of get out of the map when you're not really supposed to. But I think from your playthrough, this one it went solidly pretty good.
Oh yeah. I mean, compared to 3, where literally there was a mission where I walked off the roof of a skyscraper and ended up on the streets of Kamurocho, totally fine, but because it still thought I was in the quest, nothing spawned on any of the streets. So I was just running around in empty Kamurocho, stuck in a quest that was on the top of a skyscraper that I was at the bottom of.
And I think there's some missed triggers as well, where like a cutscene wouldn't trigger and the quest wouldn't trigger. Then you were just like, you had to restart, I remember.
That's a cool glitch. Unless you're trying to actually play the game, then it's not so cool.
I mean, I'm sure it's great for sequence breaking if you're speed running, but if you're trying to actually play the video game, not quite so good.
I mean, it's only good for speedrunning if you can get back into the sequence somehow.
Yeah,
or just like start a different sequence.
Yeah, as much as like it's a neat experience that can kind of happen, but if it keeps happening, then it can get frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just clicking the orders for my pizzas here. Pookie likes extra pineapple on her Hawaiian. Extra pineapple. That's right.
You gotta get the spicy pickled banana peppers.
I put that on
Put
mine.
that on the Hawaiian pizza.
No, she doesn't like the spicy so much. I usually throw those on my, works or everything, or every extreme. Every place calls it something different. Yeah. Can I send you one? No, but I'll order you one, and you can come here and get it. Hey, Doomed! Thank you so much for the resub. Much appreciated. And that's 3 months, not 0 months. I promise one day I'm going to replace that bot. I keep going to replace it, and then Rage says, I'm going to work on RageBot. And I went, oh, okay, let's get Rage. And then RageBot doesn't get me, so I'll find something.
You still need to give me that list. I asked you for the list.
Well, actually, you didn't ask me for the list. You said, let's get together and make a list, and then you started playing Tarkov.
Yeah. I did, didn't I?
It's okay. No, the bot's just using base 0. It's still accurate.
RNG.
I went and just said
loot?
it's a good.
Yeah, RNG.
That's about it.
I don't even think loot.
Encounters. It's mostly just the encounters.
More encounters, yeah. Just encounters, because they drop the same stuff.
There's
which is
like,
nothing.
It's like minor stuff like coin, like money and other kind of stuff, and who you encounter, but it's nothing where it's one of those things where with RNG, if you're not really aware of it, it's probably good.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of the things where that's the kind of purpose of RNG. It's supposed to add a bit more dynamic to your playthrough, and not just have the same experience over and over again. So if you're aware of it in the sense of you wish there was you're getting bored of the stale encounters, or you could predict things, or if it's just too chaotic and you can't find a pattern, or it's just kind of disruptive, or the sense or you need something and then the RNG prevents you from progressing, then those are usually cases where RNG is bad. But
yeah,
it's one of those tools. It's very useful, but it's one of those things where you have to use it carefully and situationally and not just kind of throw it in. It's one of those things where when you start off as a game designer and you start playing with dice, that you just kind of want to use dice for everything because it's such a cool concept that you could just add entropy to almost everything. But it doesn't mean that everything should have entropy, and that's why you're a game designer. You're supposed to design the experience, not just let fate in there and figure out what happens.
Have you tried jalapeno and pineapple pizza? Yep, I like sweet and spicy. Big sweet and spicy fan.
Yeah, same. I just prefer the pickled banana peppers because I like the extra acidity, so to kind of kill the sweetness of the pineapple just a touch.
I tried a new pizza place, and that's bloody expensive. It better be really good pizza.
The gamble. We'll see. Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's too bad reviews aren't viable anymore. It's hard to actually tell what's what's real.
Yeah.
You can't,
And
you
what's
can't
just
vet
been
them.
botted.
Same with
Yeah.
game reviews.
It's not just games apparently, but it's the whole thing. Internet made it so easy.
Yep.
Know? There's
Game
no
reviews just
personality
got
tied to
bought
it.
out is the problem.
Yeah, well, all over, like just everything, right? I mean, Amazon, you get bought out. Food critic, Yelp, pay a little bit more, and Yelp bends a bit to your favor, and all that stuff. It's not where it was in the. I think the biggest thing that happened with reviews, just on a slight tangent, is that it lost that personal connection, right? You knew who the reviewer was, and you could relate to them, and that's why even when it was just an arbitrary number, there was a bit of context, right? If you know someone and they give it like an 8 out of 10, you know who they are, you know what they like, you know what that experience was to them. And if they give it an 8 out of 10 and you know that your tastes and preferences are similar to theirs, then you could probably have a similar score when you go through it. Now, when you just read an arbitrary number, it's, you can't really gauge it. That's some person's, 10 out of 10 can be another person's 5 out of 10. And that's just how life is. So we don't have that personal connection. And it was the same thing with like food and movie critics, back in the 80s and 90s, they had personality behind them. You knew who it was, and you would, there'd be certain food critics or movie critics you wouldn't agree with at all because they just don't see things in the same lens that you do, which is fine because you would find someone who is like that for you, and then you go off their recommendations because you find that you have similar tastes. And I think over the digital era, we've kind of just lost that because we got just condensed to just giving things a label and a number and, a blanket effort rather than actually having a personal connection with it.
For sure. Yeah. So I look at negative reviews rather than positive reviews, because positive reviews, you just get a bunch of people that liked the product going, it's great! And that's worthless. Negative reviews, you get a lot more information from. And then you can gauge how valuable that negative information is. If the person's like a fucking crackpot and bitching about the product because he didn't read it right, then you ignore that one. But if they're like, hey, I bought it and it was DOA, and then you see that 10 times, maybe pay attention to that. That's kind of where
you're
I'm
trying
at
to
with
buy
reviews.
a power supply and you see that 40% of reviews are it blew up or it was DOA. You probably shouldn't buy a gigabyte power supply.
Way to sneak that in there. All right, Yakuza 4 is done. It's got okay gameplay and audio with good video and writing. Sounds right to me. Sounds right to me. Yeah, just straight calling them out.
They shouldn't have made power supplies that explode.
Yep. Yeah, you don't want to get called out. Don't make the thing that blows up. Fine, fire is a form of power. You're not wrong. It's just not a very usable form of power. More a destructive form of power. It's fine. Nioh 2 Remastered. I've actually been looking forward to talking about this one.
I have opinions on this game, man.
Me too. Strong ones that probably will mean we're going to go way later than we should. Probably. Probably. It's fine. We started late. And afterwards...
Ninja's here.
Who said Nioh? Hey, Ninja. Welcome. Dropping out to... we don't do spoilers.
We're generally pretty good about spoilers.
Yep.
But
you're going to get
if
our
you feel
opinion,
the need to drop,
but if you
go
want to
ahead.
drop, you're welcome to. We're not going to give you anything that's going to tell you anything about the game. Just what you can expect when playing it.
Yeah, we try not to, but sometimes things happen. Or chat. People in chat, we don't have full control over
Yeah,
what can pop
we don't
up,
have
so if
we don't
someone
have
really
control
wants
over
to-
chat. That's fair. But yeah, the idea is that if you're watching this video sometime in the future because you're interested in the game, you don't want to know what to expect. Trust me, you kind of do. you kind of do. Put it in emote only mode. Boom, done. I mean, you're not wrong. 176.
Depends on who's got emotes. There might be Nioh emotes from someone. People can make pictures. They ask
Does Val have a sub button? Val's probably got Nioh emotes.
He does not. He does not. He has like one emote, I think. He definitely needs some Nioh 2 emotes, though.
I don't know
9
how he's
playthroughs, I think,
enjoyed that much playtime.
He's done
in
10
this game.
playthroughs now. He did a 10th playthrough while I
And
was
each
playing.
of them are like 130 hours. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah. He does it a lot faster than 130 hours now. Like a 100% run is not that long anymore. He knows where everything is every time and how to beat all the bosses. Doesn't take that long. But world building.
solidly okay.
Yeah, I'm at a solid okay on the world building. There is a world.
There is a world. They make
You
it
are
pretty
certainly
interesting.
in it. It kind of ends there, though. That's it. There is definitely a world that has
Well,
taste.
no, I
No,
think there's more to it than that. It draws a lot from Japanese mythology.
That's fair.
It involves a lot of, sort of modified Japanese history. It does a pretty good job of pulling those things together.
Yeah, I think this is one of those kind of topics where it's similar to other games that you guys play, that it's kind of hard to compare and contrast, because on that side of the spectrum of world building, it's gonna not really compare to, but towards a lot of other games and the ones that have attempted, it does have quite a bit going on in regards to its world. There's a lot of effort and depth that's been put into it. It's just maybe not at the caliber of Hidetaka and other company, but I wouldn't detract anything from it. Definitely not like a negative. It's there. It helps provide an experience. It does add quite a bit to it. But there's always going to be a whole lot of room and improvements in these style of games for world building.
Yeah, I think the world building is actually one of the strengths of this game.
So my browser just jumped into it trying to connect to document. It might be because it's processing a payment on another page, but it's not listening to me. I can't even refresh the page right now. So if you guys can go make a change and see if it works for you, and if it shows up,
Technology.
that's wonderful. Welcome, Thomas. You have arrived. You've missed us discussing Yakuza 4, which is fine, because now we're talking about Nioh 2.
That was also the summation of a large chunk of Yakuza 4 as well. It was fine. The writing was amazing.
There is a world. Yep. My biggest thing, and definitely not giving it a good, is at the very beginning of the game, or the very end of the game, which spans, a long period of time. Like an entire lifetimes of time. I can't tell you the difference. You put me in a level, you show me the level, I can't tell you if it's the beginning of the game or the end of the game. Everything looks the same.
I don't know if that's always really too much of a bad thing. I mean, that's kind of applicable to even a lot of games that have world building. The world doesn't need to be a full dynamic thing. It's mostly just how foundational the world actually is to the game, and how much is there, for the player to experience and pull from, and certain genres of games and certain style of games really kind of amplify that and pull that through. It's nice to have that. It kind of pulls that more into, like you say, with characters, where you have character development. It's nice to have world development, but just because it's been a time frame doesn't mean the world necessarily has to change, because depending on what the focus is, it could be focusing on the character development. And then you can even look at games like even some of the Yakuza games that had better world building. That world doesn't really change too much overall. It's the characters and the situations they put themselves through that have actually gone through that kind of dynamic process.
That's fair, but in Yakuza it builds like a background of places, and you can identify a place and its importance. There's no such thing as a place or an importance to a place or anything like that in Nioh 2. I don't know, I was basically just in... I felt like the whole time I was playing it, I was in... It's definitely going to be part style as well. But the whole time I just felt like I was in generic Japanese Village A. That was it.
Yeah, the reason that I think the world building is redeemed is how they use the Japanese mythology. Like, they pull in a lot of Japanese mythology, dress it up a little bit, make it sort of more dangerous for the most part.
Yeah, the level design maybe not be too, to match kind of what was pulled up in sense of, I guess, lore and kind of background world wise, but I think overall there was still a fair bit there. But I'd still be fine with just saying it's okay. It did its job. It is part of focus of the experience, and it helps enhance it.
Would you guys mind
still room for improvement?
Filling out while I fix this?
I just did.
Okay, I have to end task my entire browser and reorder my dinner.
Rip.
Oh boy. Yeah, I made changes and then it
It didn't update on my screen, but it updated on yours.
yeah.
Is what I'm expecting. Yeah, it's super not happy. There you go. There you go. Characters. I guess okay. Pizza crashed my browser, 100%. Whatever it was doing, it was super unhappy. And I've got to do it again. But yeah, characters, I mean, there's the main character and his counterpart. You know what? I do like how they managed the counterpart so that you can create your own character and they can still have a consistent character in the story for the cutscenes and stuff. I can't hear you, Pseudo. Oh, geez, I know what happened. Hold on. I know what happened. Sorry, Pseudo. I know what happened. When I killed the browser, it disconnected me from the room. That's why all of a sudden, you can't hear anyone. But I can fill dead space until I manage to fill everything and hit start. And then you can hear Pseudo again now.
Oh. Could they not hear us? Because we were talking about characters this whole time.
Yeah, I was filling the dead space with words because, when I restarted my browser, obs.ninja closed.
Oh boy.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
It does, doesn't it?
Interestingly, our video feeds didn't stop, and I could still see Pseudo talking.
Because the video feeds are grabbing a URI and injecting it directly into the video. Not capturing the browser's audio like the audio is.
Well, as a summation of what we were talking about, there's a lot of characters in Nioh 2, and we didn't feel that any of them are particularly memorable.
Nope.
And would prefer that they took that effort that they spent on making a huge cast of characters and condensed it down into a smaller cast that was deeper.
The one thing I did say that I liked was their use of a consistent character along with the main character, where actually my name was half his name even. We were just seen as two individuals with each other to add that consistency into all the cutscenes and everything. But then your actual character is in the cutscenes, so was it really needed?
Well, it's their way to have like generic JRPG writing with a silent protagonist.
Yes. Talk show is set up far more interestingly than you know. All 3 video feeds are from separate geolocations coming in as 1080p and streaming out of one OBS.
Yeah, if you want to do some reading, check out the video.ninja GitHub and read their code. Read what they've been up to. They've been building some really excellent video transport stuff that works on WebRTC. Go check it out.
Yeah, we used to use Discord. It looked like ass. That's why Rage and Pseudo are so crisp in the video now.
And also, no Discord interrupting audio and applying its own compression is nice.
Yeah. Characters are not
Discord,
bad.
but it wasn't really made for it.
Yeah, it's trying to pay by MasterCard. I'm not going to click anything because I think I crashed it.
Hold.
I'll let you guys do the characters because I agree. I agree with what you said. They're not bad, but they're not very memorable. They're definitely not the focus of the story. They're used and then dropped really quickly often. I never ever type my credit card number ever. Ever. Never, ever, ever type your credit card number out. Keyloggers can get it that way. If you use a keyboard or a password manager, the keyloggers will never see the password. It'll just get automatically entered. Done.
Yeah, there would have to be malicious code running on the website or inside your browser to catch it.
And that's not likely, especially if you're running Brave.
Well, anything that's based on the Chromium engine, really. The Chromium engine is quite good.
Yeah. I just didn't want to say run Chrome.
Could run Chromium.
Yep.
It's the open source engine and browser that Google forks and sticks a bunch of tracking stuff into.
I like that my browser is being so responsive that it didn't even notice that the characters has changed to an okay. Yeah, back to trying to connect. Ooh. This is not so good. This is not so good. I hope my food order goes through. I think it's just going to crash and fail to pay again. It does not like this MasterCard payment option.
Sounds like it's got a JavaScript loop that doesn't have a terminus condition.
I am going to kill just that one thread, I hope. Gonna be you. Go to details and
A
tasks.
bad one.
Oh, no, that was everything. It's skip the dishes, actually. It's super not happy. One more try, because it's been failing a different pay through first. Oh, fuck off. Oh, fuck off. VAIO. There we go. Could not start video source. Oh, good. I don't want you to start that video source. Disable. Start. Perfect.
Spin up a VM for ordering pizza.
There we go. You can hear sudo and rage again, and I'm going to use my other browser for this.
If you've got something that's Chromium based, you can actually right click in the tab bar and pull up Chrome's task manager and use that to kill the website.
Yeah, I've never actually used Chrome's task manager.
It's very useful, especially when you're developing things and then you accidentally have an infinite loop and everything comes to a halt.
No doubt.
Done that way too much.
Do I not have... There we go. Not sign up. Log in. Thank you. Log in with email. There we go. Hey.
Yeah, you can also... I think it's Shift Escape is the keyboard shortcut for that. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Okay, I'm good. Thanks, Rage. Didn't know there was a shortcut for that. Yeah, you learn all sorts of crazy things here. Storyline.
I work in web browsers on the daily. I break them a lot.
So, where are we at with storyline?
I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Let's put it in okay. Because there is a storyline there. There is a storyline there.
You could have fooled me.
It follows the history of Japan. Just
Kinda, sorta.
embellished. Well, their history is embellished as it is. When you read their mythological history, it's very tightly intertwined with Oni, and they're basically just writing Japanese mythology. It's very, very accurate for a lot of Japanese myth. All the Onis are right out, or the yokai are right out of there. It's pretty close. It's just, it can be ignored.
Yeah, I just did.
The story,
From what I played and watched of the game,
never
I didn't
forced
get any storyline
down
out of it.
your throat, though it is there.
It's a
Just
comment I've seen a
not
few times is that
So super interesting that
it has a decent story. It's just not told very well.
into it. Well, I'd say it's hidden in different ways. It's not really hidden. It's just not force fed. Like Dark Souls is hidden. You have to go find it. This one, it's all there. It's just not fed to you, and you can just go in and read and get background, but it's all just basically reading. That's all.
So how'd it run on the PS5?
Good. PS5 performance is amazing. What even is load time? I mean, literally load time from selecting a level to being in the level was a second or two. And
Animations.
then, like, the whole story bit that I didn't read, like explaining each level, is there for like a second, and then you can just hit X and skip it because it's already done loading. if they didn't have that press a button to load in, you would be there in like sub 1 second. It would just be in the level. It's really cool. I loved the animations.
Yeah, they were pretty good. There's a little bit of jank with the hits, like when you get hit or when you hit an enemy, like those animations are a little jank. Other than that, like everything's pretty damn well done.
Smooth and believable. I really liked the yokai, especially like they have so many strange ones. The wheels rolling around, the snake women, and everything is just it looks right. Yeah, hated those things.
Style. I feel like there isn't quite enough of it. Like the game is very stylish, but it's all very samey.
Yeah, everything looks like it fits, but everything looks like it fits to the exact same building.
Yeah, like the exact same castle.
Yeah. Like there's nothing to identify one area from another area. The very last area in the game and the very first area in the game, if I stare at a wall and give you two images, you would never be able to tell me which is which. And every level in the game is like that. I can find a wall that is identical in all of them. And it just, that's all you see, that's all you know. There's nothing
but it is
differentiate.
also like in the parts of the game that are moving, it is unmistakably Nioh 2.
Yes, it's always Nioh or Nioh 2. Nioh 1 and 2 look very much the same.
Nioh 2 was Team Ninja, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like a Team Ninja game. Like that's how it looks.
Yes. But that's all it looks.
Yeah.
Where are my banana peppers?
Don't crash your browser again.
I don't see any. Well, jalapenos are fine. Change. Don't try the other order method first. Hopefully that works. We're not in the same browser, so if it does crash, we're okay. I've opened a different browser. So we're at okay on style, I guess?
Yeah,
style
okay at best.
is unique to a fault. The game is very Team Ninja, however, you cannot tell the beginning from the middle, from the end. Musical score? I don't even remember.
There is music.
Well, yeah, I know there
It's
is.
mostly ambient. There's some combat music during bosses. It's okay.
I remember it always fit the mood. Music always fit the mood. However, it is not very standout. It will not have you jamming or make it playlist, but it will not ruin the mood. No Space Country. Like even in this game, it would have been off-putting. You imagine like you jump into a level and you got some like Garth Brooks or something playing while you fight the boss. You'd have been like, "The fuck is this?"
Man, I got so excited when I saw the Dead Space Remastered trailer because I thought they might finally be making a third game. Oh,
Nope. So the voice acting. Does anyone here know Japanese? Because I thought it sounded decent. I thought it sounded fluid and believable. And
yeah, the performance is pretty good. It's not like Yakuza good. It's not, what I would expect out of a film or a television show or an anime or anything like that. But it's fine. It's totally serviceable.
I found the voice lines during combat and stuff to be very good.
Yeah, yeah.
The
The
way they
combat
yelled at
grunts
each
were
other made
good.
it very, very organic in combat. And felt very realistic there. Were we at an okay or a good?
I'd say overall okay. Like the first thing I think of when I think voice acting is your companion character,
Mm-hmm.
and I honestly didn't think that their performance was that great.
So apparently it's something about the MasterCard checkout at Skip because it crashed my Chrome browser now as well.
Rip. Firefox?
Rip.
Do I even have Firefox? I do. All right. Well, yeah. So voice acting. Does anybody mind filling that out for me so I can try to order dinner? Because it's actually supposed to be here like now, and I'm just ordering it now. That would be lovely. I'm sorry, everyone. This is such a shit show today. That's what happens when I sleep in, like infinitely. Literally infinitely sleep in. I slept in infinitely today. It was not good.
Pseudo, I see you've got that cell selected. Are you typing
Yeah.
away?
I'm gonna try to type on those. Say the voice acting was solid. Um, certain characters, performance. I guess I'm still waking up myself, so I'm trying to use better words than just could have been better. But let's change this a bit later.
Could have been better, bit lacking.
Yeah, some character performance were a bit lacking. I like that. I like that a lot more. Because just keep it. Overall, I
Hello,
think it's
puppy.
okay is not bad. It's just if it was to be a good, it needs to, of course, kind of unfortunately be on that Yakuza level or movie level kind of quality of voice acting where it typically will become a focus of the game. It's not really it doesn't always make sense for them to really push the bar that far if that's not really going to be the focus and the point that people are playing. The main reason for this is going to be combat and the action and stuff like that, not really going to be the overall vocal performances. And to get higher tier voice acting, it can get quite a bit expensive, as well as just take up a lot of time, because you do have to take quite a few takes and making sure that things fit properly, and it's not always makes sense to put a whole lot of effort into that if that's not the mainstay. If you're not going to have 5 or 6 hours worth of cutscenes, you don't really need to put a lot of your time and effort and budget into these.
For sure. I completely agree. Although we have had several games where we commented and said, this is just as good being text only as it would have been being voice acted, based purely on the amount of budget that would have been assigned to it.
We gave it okays in those times, though, not goods.
Yes. I don't think that the voice acting here is a detriment to the game. It's just not outstanding.
Okay, I'm back.
Hey, Firefox. Something that isn't Chromium based. Apparently it's a bug with the V8 engine.
Yeah, apparently it really doesn't like whatever MasterCard is doing to verify payments there. Yeah, I think we're basically good at that. The voice acting is fine. It's not like it was a major part of the game. It was little blips between the action. The focus of the game is clearly Team Ninja, so action.
The sound effects, I would say, were pretty good.
I really liked them.
Yeah.
Sound effects were high quality, sounded accurate to their representation, and did a great job of relaying information during the battle.
And there was a good variety as well. Like, it's not always the same sword slash, for instance. Like, you get a different sound out of different weapons.
Yes.
Got forced into it because Microsoft killing old Edge. That's actually a benefit.
Yep. Yeah. Edge runs way better on the Chromium engine. It's a good thing. Don't reinvent the wheel. Use what's out there.
But at the same time, everything being Chromium, which is, basically under Google's control, is a little scary too.
Yeah, the AI sometimes makes silly decisions in battle, but there's a lot of variables going on in battle in this game. Huge loss of features after the Switch. I never used Edge, so I didn't know. Edge was terrible.
Yeah, the loss of features is because Chromium is sandboxed from your system, so that anything that runs within it can't access the rest of your system, whereas what was Edge's engine called? It's like Karma or Cha something. Anyway, it had its hooks much deeper into Windows because it was Microsoft developed, so it could, make system calls and stuff like that, which is actually like a pretty significant security risk. Although it did honest to God render faster. Like it rendered better because it was directly addressing the video card for a lot of the 3D acceleration and compositing.
Yeah, it just also allowed every JavaScript that executed in your browser to access your system.
No, you're thinking of ActiveX.
Yeah, ActiveX was even worse. ActiveX was even worse. ActiveX was, yeah, let's focus on Nioh 2 so that I can eat pizza in a bit. That's where I'm at. Accessibility, I think, is just at an okay. It might even be a bad. I don't think there was much.
Yeah, the consoles are still kind of way behind in that regard, which is very unfortunate.
And just this game's
their
tight controls and necessity for reaction speeds and stuff like that. Like if you can't do that, there's no way around it.
On a quick search, it seems like there's almost no accessibility features other than audio sliders and subtitles. And then just leaning on the PS5 for anything else.
Don't cut it. If you cannot play this game the way it is, then too bad. So that's where we're at on that. What are you?
Yeah, it's at least like just to give a shout out to like The Last of Us Part 2. Even though it's a console game, they added a lot in regards to accessibility, and that's kind of what should be the standard, the gold standard, because for the most part, a lot of that stuff exists already in most games. It's just not exposed in a UI. And I think that, just having that stuff available under an accessibility menu, I think that should be fine. It'll allow people to kind of tweak what they need to and kind of trust the gamer in that regards. And you can put a little disclaimer saying, changing these may change your experience, but, if people need to tweak them for a certain reason, I'm sure they're going to, know what they want to change.
Yeah, they're probably trying to change their experience for a reason.
If you're interested in accessibility at all, I highly recommend going and looking at the different options that are available for The Last of Us Part 2, because it's actually incredible, and that is the standard to which everything should be held.
Excellent. Doom Eternal also gets a nice little shout out because it was phenomenal on the accessibility front.
Yeah.
Mechanics. Okay. So how long do we have?
Well, I mean, until your pizza gets here.
I'm gonna put it at okay, because they're not
That's
bad.
brave.
They're not bad. They're not bad mechanics. There's just too many of them. There's
And
actually
most of them are pretty shit.
no. There's actually a really good game in there.
Oh yeah,
It
sure.
really
If you
is.
cut out like 70% of what they've got going on, it would be great. But that other 70% does exist, and it's pretty shit.
they made a really really good game.
And then they just
And
kept
then they
going
kept
and
making
going and
and
going
kept making
and going and
and
going
kept
and
making.
going.
So I mean, I'm at an okay, not a bad, because there is a large number of people who like it, and it fits into a niche of people that wanted something like this. So there is market, there is people, there is interest. It's not bad.
Skyrim is one of the best-selling games of all time, and the only thing that rescued it is the fact that it's a mod platform.
Yeah, but this one's not modded at all. People actually like the game for the game.
I'm just saying, just because a lot of people like it and it's sold a lot, doesn't mean it's good.
I agree with that, but this one isn't being saved by like some external thing. People are legitimately buying and playing it for the mechanics. And what people continue playing it for is actually for a lot of the builds and the grinding and all that. And you know what? The builds can actually be pretty interesting. There's a lot of variation and flavor to the builds. There really is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that I entirely agree with.
The
That
weapons
is
are
100%
extremely
true.
unique and fit into different situations.
The weapon categories are extremely unique.
Yes. This is what I mean. Like I'm not saying like different swords are different, but sword and odachi and switchglaive, each one class is very different from the others, with very different moves, very different situations, very different strengths.
But within that category, they're exactly the fucking same.
Yes. But that's again it's better that they're all the same within that category.
Is it though?
Due to the way the loot system is done,
it,
yes.
though?
Yes. Because
Yeah,
if
but
they
the
were
loot
all
system is also wrong.
okay,
Like
but
that's part of the 70% of mechanics that I think are just garbage.
But that's you and me. I didn't like it. But like I said, a large majority of the people that play the game like the farming. That's what they like. They like going and making interesting builds and getting the loot for the build. That's what interests them in. It's not our interest, I agree. I found the loot system far too much, and I would have loved the game if it didn't have a loot system in it. If they didn't
yeah, it
have
would've
like the
been way
RNG loot and the crafting, and I didn't have to spend an hour between every other mission. Because it was like 2 missions, and then I have to update all my gear, and 2 missions, and I have to update all my gear, and 2 missions, and I have to update all my gear. Otherwise, the number aspect of the game makes it feel like you're just so far behind. Like, wow, I have to perfect this boss now. He one-shots me, and I have to beat on him for half an hour to kill him because my gear fell behind because I didn't update it for 2 levels. I agree, I don't like that, but it's not like people are playing it for the storyline or for the characters. They're
Or
literally
apparently for the
playing
combat if they're there just to grind.
the grinding and combat go hand in hand, right? But they like making builds. They like having that different approach to combat. I think this is falling into a strong niche, and that's why we see Nioh 1 and 2 being so successful. And yeah, stop calling them fucking Souls-like, because they're Nioh, and they're completely their own thing, and nothing is like Nioh.
They're closer to Tenchu than anything.
Yeah. Actually, the gameplay feel of it felt more like Ninja Gaiden with a stand bar.
What I was gonna say, what I noticed mostly about the mechanics, because a lot of that stuff can kind of boil down to, of course, preference and all that stuff. But what I found a bit was there seemed to be a point where it would be like struggle, and then it's easy, and struggle, and then it seems like there wasn't a whole lot of times where it was like, it was kind of like once it clicked.
Yep.
I'm not too sure. I'm trying to explain it a bit better, but it's one thing I've noticed when people try to compare it to like games that are more like, when they say like Souls and the bosses and stuff like that, where it's there's a lot of difference in between of that when you get like grind to that skill level, or you get to that point where it's not always just going to be completely easy. It may be easier once you got the mechanics, but when you're actually doing it, it's still requiring like a lot of your focus, and that if there's missteps, then the punishment is there. It seemed like it would struggle, and then once it was, the path was found, it was then, not really too much of a real, the
To be fair, that view of it is slightly me, and also probably if you've been watching Val, because I've played so many of these tight action games now that once I get it, I tend to just get it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's just that's a result of the mechanics, right? Like once you get it, you get it. There's no other real thing that is thrown in there to make it so that, once you hit that threshold that you just completely stomp them. You can still put other stuff in there, still have, other mechanics in there that just prevent them from just getting either completely stomped or still having it where it's, maybe not something that's just once you hit that threshold, it's just, here we go, it's done. It's I'm not going to really suggest too many things to throw into there, but I'm saying that's just one part I noticed in the mechanics is that, you hit a point and then it's just, okay, now I'm done, let's move on. Okay, I hit a point and, it's sometimes a gear check, sometimes a level check, sometimes a skill check, but it feels like the tying in between of all those three could have been done a little bit.
It could have been done a lot better. Like the big thing that gets me is how much of it is just a gear check. Because
it is all a skill and gear check.
You cannot beat that game without leveling up, without getting better.
That's
gear.
what I'm saying.
You
It is
can't
all
do it.
It is all simultaneously skill and gear check.
But if you just level, you can roll through anything.
Well, I mean, there's still like bosses will fucking smash you if you don't avoid certain hits.
Unless it's got a one-hit mechanic on it, you can just out-level it.
Yeah, well, nothing has a flat-out one hit, but it's still tough. Yeah, it is still tough even if you level, but you can trivialize things a lot more. I mean, you could say the same thing about Dark Souls. You can just out-level bosses.
Oh, absolutely. You 100% can out-level bosses in Dark Souls.
Yeah, but it's still a skill-based game.
I don't know, man. When I beat that game fist only, I just got a lot of vitality and wore really heavy armor and shrugged off everything the game threw at me.
But you can still use skill to overcome that, so you don't need to grind, you don't need to level, etc., etc., etc.
Right, but Dark Souls also has a much better gear system.
I'm not going to argue that ever.
You're not constantly trying to replace your gear because your numbers are too small. Like
you just take a gear and level it up with you.
And even then, game. Like you don't need to.
No. But that's just the I don't like the gear system. I still think it deserves an okay. It's not a good. It is not good. It is way too much to be a good. They outscoped themselves. But it hit this thing where it just kind of becomes its own thing. It's not like anything else out there. And they have a legitimately large following of people that really liked this style. DS1 is a masterpiece, yes.
Yeah, like I said, just because we're giving it okay doesn't mean it's bad in regards, or just because if someone likes it means that their opinions are wrong in any means. Like, I know people who enjoy Death Stranding quite a bit, and that'll get some opinions from some people on the panel. But as I said, it's just the beauty of how we are as people. We have different tastes, what keeps things interesting. And me growing up, I liked a lot of Harvest Moon games, and a lot of them are very, very repetitive, and some of them are you do the same thing literally over and over and over again without too much difference. And that's just what I liked at that time. And for a lot of people, mechanics wise, I would say either bad or good, but to me it was my preference, and it's what I like to do. It doesn't mean it's anything wrong with that.
Yep, for sure. No, I'm like I said, I think we could give it a good if they replace the entire gear system. That's basically where I'm at. Just remove that one thing and let us have a
down the stance system and made the weapons within a category at least a little bit different, so that they're not just reskins of the same movement set, and made the
I honestly would not like it
system less obtuse.
I would not like it so much. They need to have the way it is now. They need to have all the katanas act like a katana. It just has to be that way. It would be too like we've already said, it's too much.
Sure,
if they had slight differences to their moveset, it would be totally.
Spam. So, like, we're not talking about the loot system here.
Yep.
We're just taking these weapons as a vertical. They're all on their own. We're examining them in a
But
vacuum.
you can't, because they're so reliant on the gear system.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. That's the exercise that we're doing right now.
Okay.
There is no reason to use a different named weapon within the same category. Why have them?
The set bonuses.
But that does, like, there are weapons in the sets?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. They all
Okay,
some
yeah,
sets
no,
some
take it
sets
back.
also include bows and guns and stuff in the set.
No, I take it back then. I thought it was just armor.
Nope. Some sets even include the like extra little thingies. I can't remember what they're called.
The charms.
Yeah, the charms. Yeah, which is why when I got a set charm, or not a set charm, but a charm that makes it so that all your sets need one piece less to activate the bonus,
Rorg.
I just went fucking nuts. And like threw different sets across my whole character and was getting 2-piece set bonuses from all sorts of stuff. It was so fucking broken. I actually had a lot of fun with the loot system. The sets and stuff like that was super interesting to build and play with. Super interesting. Yeah.
It's 2 stat scaling categories for most weapons. Then they vary in attack parry balance, and then locked in base stats and sets.
Yeah.
Not sure what you mean, Ninja. Like, if you have 2 katanas, will one of them scale better with strength versus the other one that scales better with whatever this game's version of Dex is?
No. Swords are swords. Really? I didn't notice. I saw them all being the same. They do have different. They have different attack values on different weapons of the same level. I know that.
That is very poorly explained then.
Yeah, it's one of the things of there's
part of-
just too many mechanics.
Yeah, so part of the problem is that there's just a lot of mechanics, and you're to a point where you have almost a community of people just discussing all the different outcomes that they've found from it, because it's not tied together very well. Not always a bad thing, because it allows for people to go through a lot of playthroughs and still discover new things, but it's still, as an overall first playthrough experience, would be nice if these things were communicated a bit better or tied together in a way that was a bit more coherent.
Teaching the mechanics is definitely a weakness of the game. And you could argue the same thing about Dark Souls, that they don't teach you the things very well, but there's not as many mechanics, and they give you a basis. Like, they tell you the buttons, at least. For a split second, I thought the shirt was the Michelin Man with a katana. Nope. That's
It's
a Sekiro
Roberto's
meme.
father.
Yep. You need to press start and hover over all the things to read them. Okay, fair enough. I didn't do that. Fair enough. But I'm still at an okay on mechanics, for sure. It's never going to be a good. You're never going to convince any of us that it's a good. But it's fine if you want that too many mechanics mess. There's definitely a niche of people that like it. And it's becoming more of a thing. I don't think it's ever going to become the next Dark Souls. I don't think it's ever going to take off to that level. But I think it's fine the way it is. For the people that
think
love
it actually has quite a bit of potential. I could see this going pretty far.
There
Especially when you
is
start refining
potential.
They definitely have to refine it.
Yeah,
It needs to be less. Needs less. You made too much game.
it's like I said, just refinement and polishment, which just comes with time and experience.
Yeah. But we didn't
so
see that improvement from 1 to 2. In fact, they went the wrong way. And added more mechanics to 2.
And this is correct me if I'm wrong here, because I haven't actually done my research on the team that made Nioh 2. But if it's the same team that has been working at Team Ninja for quite some time now, this is a repeated mistake that we see from them.
Yeah.
And maybe it works really well in the Japanese market. I don't know. Maybe it does. But it doesn't work in North America.
Japanese games do tend to like obtuse mechanics a lot more. Looking at games like Legend of Mana. Legend of Mana was somewhat popular over there and did not do well over here at all because nobody understood what was happening. Because every time you place something on the map, you're changing like 400 fucking mechanics. It's calculating like everything from everywhere and not telling you about any of it. Just like, yeah, go have fun. And then every time you place something, that's solid, done, can never be changed again in the game. So, you didn't know what you were doing at the beginning? Too bad!
It just, I feel like...
I'd have the player unlock each weapon from drops with 100% rate and side missions, then have all the other loot be materials for reforging their stats. I'd be fine.
Yeah, that'd be way better.
Much better with that. To touch on the mechanics too, another thing I really hate, smithing texts being rare drops from bosses that you have to grind the boss for. Abilities for weapons being rare drops from bosses that you have to grind the boss for. And they want this to be a grindy replay, do the boss over and over and over and over and over again system, which plays great with Diablo 2 and ARPGs like that, where it's a loot grind and there's not a ton of depth to the game, so it's mostly quick combat, click on things, I've built myself right, it's all dead, and then I spend my time looking through all the loots that I've gathered. And the main game at that point is build and loot sorting and gathering loot and stuff like that. This one, the main sort of the game, is really trying to focus on quick technical combat and skilled inputs and stuff like that. And hey, I've got all this stuff, I can do that stuff well, but oh, sorry, you're not allowed to do that stuff well now because your numbers have gotten too small, so you've got to go farm and craft. And it just feels like two different games glued together. And if you like one, you might not like the other. And they don't usually go hand in hand. Monster Hunter
You must
system
have got really unlucky with your Monster Hunter kills then.
Well, we only played World, really.
Yeah, that's true. World was actually fairly reasonably balanced.
Yeah, they really made World for like the average non-Monster Hunter fan picking it up so that they'd like it. It required multiple, but not like
2 or 3, not like 50.
Yeah. I remember when I guess we killed Odogaron quite a few times to get full set of him, but I think we ended up with way more than we needed because we liked fighting it. Yeah. Well, not even we like this set. We were like, we like fighting him, so we just kept fighting him and had way more than we even needed. You can get more capturing, etc. Yeah, it's true. We did a lot of capturing. The earlier games on PSP were bigger grind fests, but the monsters were always fun. So you didn't mind. I don't know about always fun. I've seen some of the monsters from those games. We fought them later on. They're still a PITA. Mechanics.
I enjoyed the PSP ones.
Are okay.
That style of game back then. There's been improvements to it, but it wasn't... a little bit still, it's kind of a grind, but it was just kind of what the game was. You liked attacking and fighting things, and then you still got rewards for it. And you didn't feel like you had to go on and move to the next thing. You were still fine, kind of attacking and fighting things. It just could be a bit mindless. Didn't have to require, a full-on attention of what's coming next. You can kind of just zone out and do the thing until you have the gear you want.
Especially if you're a great sword player. Yeah. Just get in there and gonna hit it as hard as I can, and then it's gonna die.
It appeals to you. You are not likely to find anything like it. Most people will not like all aspects of the game. Does that make everyone happy?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think people's mileage would probably vary quite a bit in regards to the mechanics. There is definitely a set of people who will enjoy them quite a bit, and a set of people who will, fortunately, dislike them quite a bit. And that spectrum's quite large, and it's something that you don't always see in a lot of games. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of how this one will turn out in regards to, its mechanic pool, I guess I'll say.
Oh shit, we didn't even touch on the stance system.
I'm honestly, I don't mind the stance system too much. It
I
does.
wouldn't mind it if you only had one weapon.
It actually does have more use than I was using it for. Again, lots of hidden mechanics. Things like high stance causes more key damage when they're blocking.
But yeah, that's pretty obvious though. Like, never mind.
No,
Move on.
not
Move
causes
on.
more.
Move on.
Causes bonus and additional on top of the extra damage that it would cause. So it just ends up being like the biggest chunks you've ever seen if anybody tries to block high stance.
Yep. Nope. I'd move on. Otherwise, I'm just going to be here ranting about how much I hate this game mechanically.
And we know that, but they're not terrible mechanics. They're just not for you.
There's way too many of them, and they're used wrong.
There's way too many of them. I'll go with that. We can agree there's too many. But they're not used wrong. Because if you remove half of them or so, then it works fine.
Yeah, because that changes how they influence the other half. But anyway, no. We're done talking about mechanics.
It's at an okay. That's fine.
That's cool.
Bugs.
Going for bugs.
No idea. I hit none.
Seems fine.
Usually I would say, there's a console standard when it comes to bugs, but that all went out the window in December of last year. There is no longer really... It is now possible for games to release on console the same way they would on PC in a complete buggy mess.
Okay,
Very
well,
rare.
It's on version 1.027. Bug fixes for the latest patch. Fixed a bug that could cause a crash when opening person directory with DLSS enabled. That's fine.
That's
Fixed.
PC, isn't it?
Oh,
They're going to be computer...
oh, that's Steam. Yeah, PS5. Fixed a bug when game mode is 120 FPS mode. The great skill of a specific enemy may not be returned by special skill.
What?
Yeah, I don't even understand that bug. It's so obscure. Fixed a bug that certain enemies may have different than expected. Fixed a bug that certain enemies may behave differently than expected when game mode is 120 FPS mode. Fixed other minor bugs. That's it for the latest patch.
Stuff that's tied to frame rate.
Yeah, some of
I'd
this
say
frame rate
that's
stuff was going
fine.
too high. Yeah, I'd say it's good. And I played in 120 frame rate, and I didn't have any issues. The major bug was you first trying most of the wall mimics. Should not encounter any bugs in a casual playthrough. Period. Let's change this to PS5. Specify what we played it on.
Yeah, PC is always a shit show when it comes to stability, since it's just such a hardware.
There's so many
delta
different
to
pieces of
cover, but
hardware to account for, yeah.
console usually it's pretty locked down, because you have your dev kit and you've got your consoles to test on. You have that controlled environment, so that's usually supposed to be good. And then I was just making a jab at Cyberpunk of last year, where that's what happens when if a console doesn't meet that standard, and they somehow got pushed through, mostly I guess just due on previous reputations, and those they get pulled from stores and all that other kind of stuff is what happens on console, and full refunds and all that stuff. It's a lot less egregious, because on PC it's just kind of the nature of things. You can for most people won't have issues, but you can just have that one hardware combination that just makes you just have a weird time in the game.
Yep. All right, RNG. You know what? That's bad.
Yep.
Instantly bad. Skills should not be locked behind RNG drops. Period. Period. Nothing else needs to be said. That alone makes it a bad. Any disagreements? No? Okay, good. Let's move on. Controls are good.
Yeah, would you say good?
Yep. Fucking
I would have
tight.
gone with fine.
No, they were
But
fucking
I only
tight.
played Nioh 1.
Yeah, I didn't play Nioh 1. Nioh 2, they were fucking tight. Fucking tight. Super responsive.
What about tying into mechanics with everything you can do, like moving around? Everything was still fun. 'Cause I know that can be a lot of people's complaints with the games. It's just kinda how
Move
it feels
inputs
overall.
were unique, that I never accidentally used the wrong skill. Every time I wanted to activate a skill, it activated when I wanted it to activate. Yeah, the only times that I was getting oofed was me oofing rolls.
All right. Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, like I said, I don't have the same experience. But go off your experience, and if that's what happens, then yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree there are too many at the, like, too many, but that's not really the controls fault, Rubido, that's the mechanics. That's just, there's so many mechanics for you to have to put control inputs to activate. Did certain skills block progression? No.
I think it's like when we say controls, we're mostly just saying like how responsive and how does it feel. You know, how does moving around feel? And this is something like you'll really notice, or the best examples I can say is like platformers, right? You can you can put all the platformers in one genre and one category, but they can all play completely different, even if they have very similar mechanics, just due to their controls. It's something as similar as how much delay is there in between your movements? How is jumping? If you hold the button, do you go higher? Do you glide? Is there inertia? Is there how snappy is everything? How instant is everything? Red is everything responsive? Is there delays? Is there clunkiness added to it? That's kind of what controls are like outside of just what mechanics are.
So back to mechanics for just a second. We did specify that there are too many. It's still a game you can play, and while most people will not enjoy it, there is definitely a category of people that thoroughly enjoy what it is. Like a surprising number of people.
I think it's not as egregious as it could be mechanic-wise.
Oh,
Like I said,
yeah, of
there's
course.
too
It
many
could
of them,
always be worse.
but they're not just like, for mechanics to be bad, the mechanics have to be actively detrimental to the experience.
For me, the
where-
crafting and gearing system was actively detrimental, though.
Yeah, but I mean, like something to the point where it's almost unplayable. Like it makes you not want to play the game, and stop right there. Which it can get there for a lot of people. But I mean, like at a point where it's not preference, at a point where it's just like the mechanic itself is flawed. Like it doesn't work properly. It doesn't make sense. It's not something where there's just too many. Where my point where I'm saying there's too many is that there's just too much broadness in it, where you're used to just having a thing to focus on, and that's what you like to do. So you play the game without mechanics. It's that there's too much stuff for most people, where they're not used to having to do things that they're not typically used to doing in the previous games that they and the styles that they play. Whereas mechanically speaking, bad, I'd say where a bad mechanic would be something where if you die, it starts you at the very beginning of a game like this again, or you lose everything, or there's an RNG chance that your weapons just break when you hit. Stuff like that. It's just frustrating. It doesn't really make sense. Doesn't tie into a lot of stuff. That's where I would say it was bad. Too many of them is annoying, and it can be cause a bad experience.
Yeah.
But it's all of them being there isn't a mechanic in itself. It's just there are too many of them. A bad mechanic.
Each of
I
the
would say,
mechanics
is,
individually could have been fine.
yeah. There's
But
kind
it's
of
just-
my point.
It's just a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
It's like trying to paint a picture. You use a few colors and it looks nice, and then you get too many colors in there and it just ends up being a black swirl mess. That's kind of what this became. And yeah, fully, if I wasn't streaming it, the first time I needed to redo all of my gear, I probably would have stopped. Just personally. That's why I didn't play it when I had looked at it before streaming it, because I went, ooh, that looks like a lot of work. And I just want to get to the action in the combat. Which is weird, because Rage and I do like games like Diablo. But it's just the loot system pulled out.
I was going to say, that's the thing. They focused on scoping.
Yeah.
They didn't focus on having an incredibly complicated combat system, or a bunch of different stances, or having a stupid skill tree, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just straightforward ARPG mechanics and a great loot system.
Yeah. This is a looter RPG with a Souls-ish combat system shoved on top
Souls
of it.
inspired.
That's why I said ish. Souls-ish combat system shoved on top of it, and then just a pyramid of mechanics built on top of this already intricate and tight combat system. And it was just...
Also, the crafting system was entirely unnecessary.
Yeah. I think the crafting system does nothing but keep you away from the action. That's it. All it accomplishes is preventing you from playing the game. That's it. Could have been a super tight combat game without that and kept you in the action and kept the pace up. And right now the game's pace is... and just like spikes all the way out. It's like super fast combat, sit there, do nothing but craft. Super fast combat, sit there, do nothing but craft. And it's, yeah, just a weird combination. But the control tends to do exactly what you told it to do when you told it to do it. Just like that.
Except for when things get buffered.
Yeah, but that's almost every game has that problem. That's just me panicking. Shouldn't have hit those extra buttons. Right? It just happens. I can do the same thing in Dark Souls. I still say it's good control. Dark Souls has good control.
Dark Souls has great control, even though it doesn't have 8-way dodging in the first one.
Yep. But that's because
anyway,
it's designed to not need 8-way dodging.
Writing, solidly okay.
Yeah.
Video, good.
Yeah, it was a pretty game.
Audio, okay.
Yeah.
And
gameplay is a
looking
hodgepodge.
at gameplay it's exactly 2 of each, which I think makes it an okay.
Yeah, I'm good with an okay on the gameplay. It's not a game I'm ever going to rant and rave about the gameplay. But if you have the opportunity to pick it up and try it, and you do like some aspects of it, I think it is worth playing. It is a well-made game. It's just too made. The things that are in there are actually
It's a project
decently...
manager game.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
There's just way too many things.
Yeah. The things that are all in there are all done pretty well. There is fun to be had if you can find it. But there's a lot going on. A lot going on. Yeah, stuff is thrown in. Yeah, it's just a... It's the we'll do everything and then everyone will love it approach, and unfortunately that isn't true. Because when you do everything, you end up having things everyone doesn't like in your game. You can't make a game that everyone's going to like. You make a game that some people are going to like and you focus on what they want. And then it'll be a great game for those people. But if you try to make it for everyone, it's not going to work. There's no such thing as a game for everyone. I like it, but fuck, dude. So much stuff you ignore and just don't want to do. You won't want, but I do. So much stuff I ignore that I don't want to, but I do. Oh, okay, there we go. That makes more sense now. Words are hard. Yes. I tried to understand all aspects of the game, and eventually it just got to the point where I was just like, let's just fight things.
I really strongly dislike this game. I think this is an accurate rating, but really strongly dislike it.
The game is still playable if you ignore some of the attack mechanics until you get to the bosses where they expect you to understand those attack mechanics. Oh, if I didn't stance change, I would still be stuck on some bosses.
Yep. That's Nioh too.
That's why I died so much on some bosses, because I needed to figure things out. Like, hey, everything I've been doing has been working great. Oh! You don't need to stance change ever, but it makes the game infinitely easier if you do. But if you don't need to, then it's a bad mechanic. If you never need to use the mechanic, why is the mechanic in there?
Something told you so.
Well, no, I've always had that opinion, and I've always known it. But the stance does have very valid uses. Like I said, like there was one boss I died on, and then I went to high stance and I just fucking destroyed him.
But anyway, I have a very cute puppy who was asking very politely if I could please take him out to the bathroom.
I have a pizza sitting at my front door that I need to pick up off the ground. But it's more that the mechanic should be relevant to the game, Glenn Con. You're talking about enjoyment, and we're talking about relevance. More than one stance per enemy, never... Yeah, no, I get that. You don't need to be stance changing in combat, which is why I found the fact that some of the weapons were built around stance changing mid-attacks were stupid and way more than anyone ever needs. And as you said, nobody uses that. So, yeah, that's just another example of you went way too fucking overboard on the mechanics. Way too overboard. I liked a lot of the enemy design. If they give me a simpler move set, a set move set, and let me use my skill to beat all the enemies, perfect. Game's amazing then. And even the loot system was actually pretty interesting. I liked the statting. I liked the looting. I liked that side of the system. If they gave me a simple, farmable combat system where I could just become powerful and murder things with my build and get more gear to get more builds and try more builds, I'd probably love the game. They just took two games that I love and tried to put them together, and they don't really go together so well. And I kind of just ends up like, I guess. But the people that love it, and that's fine. Like, there's nothing like it out there. That's why Val has played the game 10 times. Because he likes doing different builds and testing his build against difficult enemies. And there really isn't room to do that so much in Dark Souls. There's a few different builds.
I mean, there is. It's just not as
but you play it like 3 or 4 times, you're like, okay, I've seen what it has. There's not a lot left to go after that.
No. That's incorrect.
I mean, I see a strength build, a dex build, a magic build.
Strength build, dex build, magic weapon build, holy weapon build, miracle build, straight magic build, support builds, combos of quality builds, combos of different stats together. But so many of those
play just the same.
You say the same thing about this. Like, what do you want?
The approaches of pure Onmyo to the different types of weapons, like the magic weapon build, every weapon could be used in the magic weapon build. They're all fairly the same.
Except that there are some that scale better than others with magic, and that get buffed better than others with magic, and have different
which just means there's like
within the category,
better
which makes
ones
them actually
to use
interesting rather than just waiting for a different stat drop. No, dude, you're fucking wrong.
There's still more. There's more variation. There really is.
Yes, that I will not argue with. There's absolutely more variation in Nioh 2.
Yeah, that's really all I'm saying. Is when people start getting into the builds, there's so much more variation. There's so many more things to try. That's what draws the people into this game. That is its main strength and selling point. And I won't be playing it again, but I bet you Val will do an 11th playthrough with some other build he hasn't done yet.
Probably.
So it's worth trying. Just maybe not at full price. However, if you look at it and it really looks like it's up your alley, the people that love it really, really love it because there really isn't anything else like it out there. That doesn't make it a fantastic game. But there's definitely a market for it. Most of the interesting builds in Nioh 1 and 2 are locked in NG plus cycles. Yeah, that's just more of hating on it. I don't want to have to do the game twice just to see something interesting.
I need to go walk my dog. He has to pee.
All right. We are like super late. We've gone way too long. I started late. We still went late. So thanks for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed the reviews. We got to argue a bunch, which is nice. We don't get to do that too often. I like it when we disagree on something. So until after the dog walk and the pizza, when we hopefully build some big castle, I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Pseudo.
May all your shots be headshots.